TJump, you here? Let's unmute
Yep.
TJump.
Here.
All right, cool. Mr. Batman, would you like to tell your position to?
Well, certainly. Um, we've got about another 3 minutes, but I'll go ahead and just give myself give a brief introduction. I am Mr. Batman. I am a Bible believing Christian. I am a proclaimer of the gospel and a destroyer of false worldviews. I love science. I'm an elementary school teacher, a substitute teacher. And so I love to think and teach on a very elementary level. I've been doing this now, online debating and discussing God's word in this way for about 25, 30 years. I don't know. I've lost count. I'm old. I don't remember. But I do know one thing, that the word of God is perfectly true, and that everything that is dependent upon the God of the Bible alone. As a matter of fact, that statement is so true that you cannot know anything to be true without the God of the Bible alone.
Okay, and TJump, would you like to explain your position?
Sure. So you cannot know anything to be true without the God of the Bible. That's pretty easy to prove false. I think, therefore I am. There's no premise that includes God in anywhere in that statement. I can know I exist without any reference to a God. Therefore, that is false.
Okay, sir.
All right, so we're gonna do this clean. There will be no over talking. If you over talk, you will be muted while the other person is done talking. There will not be any monologuing. Be charitable with the mic. We want a fair debate here. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and let Mr. Batman go.
Why, thank you, sir. I do appreciate that. I want to go ahead and say, first of all, Mr. T Jump, I kind of saw some of the last debate that you had with Mr. Dawkins, and I really felt bad because he does not represent the Christian community. He was talking over your head and past you, he wasn't answering your questions. I think this is where I'm going to be very helpful to you, sir, because I teach things on a very elementary level. I love to ask questions, and we need to establish very specific definitions in order for us to know what we are talking about. Number one, you said that my statement was false. Well, what would be your definition of truth?
That which corresponds to reality.
Oh, I love that, sir. The correspondence theory of reality, that which corresponds to reality. So, in order to know things to be true, we need reality. And reality is comprised of, not exclusively speaking, but at least we need time, space, and matter in order to know things to be true. Would you agree with that?
No.
Hell no.
I'm sorry, what, sir?
No, you don't need that at all. You don't need to know anything about what reality is. All you need to know is that you exist. There could be lots of different possible ways that you could exist. You could exist outside of time. That's possible. You could exist outside of space. That's possible. You could exist outside of matter. Also possible. It doesn't make a difference at all. It's irrelevant.
I'm sorry, sir. I thought you said truth was that which comports with reality.
Corresponds, yes.
Okay. Reality. Does reality consist of time, space, and matter?
And that was never a premise in any of my statements. So no, that isn't something you need.
Okay. What does reality consist of? Man, I
You
was fat
you
back
don't
then.
you don't need to know that. Like that was not a premise in my argument. So my argument is I think, therefore I am. What reality consists of is not a part of the argument.
Okay. You think, therefore you are. Would you agree that thinking, that process of thinking, requires chemical reactions and chemical compounds in
No,
the
that's
brain?
not a part of the
Well,
argument. So you cut out what?
how do you think then, sir?
No
What
idea. I
is
don't
the
need to.
process?
That's again how I think isn't a premise in the argument. The premise is I think, therefore I am. It's not here's how I think. It's just I think.
I'm
So,
sorry,
so for
sir, but
example,
unfortunately, science, I'm sorry, you're breaking up, but science wants to know how things work, why they work
I
the
don't
way they
care. I didn't
do,
say anything about
and what they
science.
are contingent upon.
I didn't say anything about science. I said
Oh,
I think,
really?
therefore I am.
So
That's
you don't like
knowledge.
science?
I
I'm
love
sorry, sir.
science, but
Hello, hello.
the
I thought.
science isn't a premise in the argument. So again, the argument is I think, therefore I am. That's it. There's no science
sir.
there. There's no
But does that
reality
exist?
there. What?
I'm sorry, sir. You just let me know when you're done bloviating, and I'll be happy.
You're cutting in and out. I can't really like you like say something and then you cut out before the end. I can't really tell when you're done talking or not, so I don't know exactly when
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Let me reset my audio settings. Hang on.
All right.
Okay, let's try this now. Now, sir, again, you said science was not a part of the argument.
Right.
Well, would you agree in order to have an argument that you're using?
You cut out after using. You said in order to have an argument, you are using.
Okay,
he
sir.
said logic, and he is coming in clear for me. So I don't know what's might be.
Yeah, I have a storm outside,
Okay,
so it could be that. I don't know.
Oh yeah, and again, sir, what I'm asking, you said it's not part of the argument. Okay, in order for us to have an argument, would you agree that we have to start with a premise and come to a conclusion?
Yes.
This would be using laws of logic, such as
Yes.
laws of identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle.
Yes.
Great. Where do those laws come from, and why do they not change over time?
The laws of logic are descriptive. They don't come from anywhere. They're like languages, like exactly like English. So reality exists, reality is reality, and then we create the laws of logic to describe that fact. So, for example, if I say that is a tree, like the statement that is a tree doesn't come from anywhere. It's made up language by humans to describe the fact there is an existing thing there, which is a tree. Logic is the exact same thing. It's like we know that reality is reality, and then we create logic as a language, just like English, to describe the fact that reality is reality. It doesn't change because it can't change. Reality can't not be reality.
Okay. Sir, once again, are you saying that the laws of logic were created by man?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if your connection is messed up or what, but I know I'm only hearing bits and pieces of what
Yes.
you're saying.
Yes.
I
The
think
laws
you
of
said
logic
yes.
were created by man. Yes.
Okay, great. So wait a minute, sir. In the beginning of the cosmos, in the beginning of the universe, could the universe both have existed and not existed at the same time in the same way?
No.
Uh-oh. Well, then that's the law of non-contradiction. And because that means that the law of non-contradiction needs the law of identity, and it's either true or it's not true, that's the law of the excluded middle. That means all of these laws of logic pre-exist the physical world,
No.
which means they also pre-exist the mind of man.
No.
Now,
No.
sir,
You're.
I'm sorry,
Wait.
sir,
Wait.
I'm
Wait.
not
Wait.
done talking. Please don't interrupt. I did not interrupt you.
Well, I'm
This is a
objecting to your
debate,
point
sir.
there. It's like that was
Okay, great.
false.
Object when I'm done talking, sir.
Okay.
Object when I'm done talking.
I thought
This is
that
how
was
this works. My name is not Darth Doolittle. I'm not going to do
Darth
that to
Doolittle.
you. I would expect that Darth Dawkins, the dude you talked with the last time.
Yeah.
I'm trying to show you how a real Christian brings forth the gospel, sir, because this is what I do. I'm a proclaimer of the gospel and a destroyer of false
Right.
worldviews. I
So
teach
I'd like to
science.
address your point now, because you said that
Okay, go ahead.
you said that the laws of logic, like, can something be itself and not itself at the same time? No, it can't. That's true that it can't, but that isn't because of the law of non-contradiction. The law of non-contradiction just describes that fact. It's not, the law of contradiction doesn't make it the case. The law of non-contradiction describes that that is the case. So, for example, the fact that a tree exists isn't true because I said the word a tree exists. The English statement a tree exists is irrelevant to the existence of the tree. So the law of non-contradiction is irrelevant to the fact that reality can't not be reality. It's just a fact of reality. And we made up this thing called the law of non-contradiction to describe that fact of reality.
So, since the laws of logic are descriptive only, then, sir, why can you not create a one ended stick or a square circle or maybe a married bachelor or military intelligence? These things do not exist. Why? Because they violate the laws of logic. The laws of logic are prescriptive laws. And did you
No.
know, sir, that I'm sorry, sir, I'm not done talking.
You asked a question,
Please.
didn't you? You said
I know,
why.
sir. It's a rhetorical question because I know the answers. I don't ever ask a question I don't already know the answer to. I'm trying to
What's the
teach you
point
a
of the
little
debate then?
something here
Because that's
today.
kind of the idea is that you ask a
The
question.
point of the debate
Your
was,
answer is
sir,
wrong.
is that you had questions yesterday
Huh?
or whenever
I
that
did?
debate was, and I'm trying to answer those questions for you
What?
because you don't seem to understand how the physical world works, and that's why me, an
I
elementary
do.
teacher,
I'd
is
like
going
to
to be
address your
so
point.
handy for
Can I
you,
address
sir.
your point? Your point that
Sure. Where does laws of logic come from? That's my point.
yeah, they're human. They're all made up. We know this from just
I'm sorry, sir,
all.
but wait a minute. If they're
Can,
human,
wait, can I?
do
Can I?
human
Can I?
minds change over time?
I wanna. Can human minds
Do human
change over?
minds change over time, sir?
In some ways yes, in some ways no. What I wanted to go back.
I'm sorry, sir. Have you ever changed your mind before?
Yes, I've changed my mind,
Oh,
but
great.
has my
So
mind
guess what?
changed?
The mind changes over time. Everything in the physical world suffers from something called the second law of thermodynamics. Are you
No,
aware of this?
that's not the case. The second law only applies to closed systems, so not
Is the
everything.
universe a closed system, sir?
I don't know. No one knows.
Oh, I do know, sir, because
You
I
can
know the
pretend
universe
you
is
know.
all. Actually, sir, no, I know. Because
No.
again, everything in time, space, and matter had a beginning. We know this because everything is winding down. Everything is going from a state of least entropy to maximum entropy,
So
from a
I'd still like
state
to
of workable, usable
actually
energy
address your
to
point
no
that you
workable,
haven't let me
usable
address
energy.
yet. So
I'm sorry, sir.
I'd like to go back
Did
because
you want,
like 3 minutes ago you
sir?
still brought up the laws of logic, and I wanted to
Yes, sir.
mention
The laws
something
of
about that.
logic, but you said they come from the mind of
Yes,
man, and
we
that
know that.
cannot
Yes,
be. We've already proved that.
I want to finish my point there. You interrupted and didn't let me finish my point there. So we
Okay,
know
go
the
ahead.
laws of logic are invented by man. You can just go to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Okay.
Wait. I'm not done yet. So you can just
I'm
go
sorry.
to the,
This was funny. Sorry.
okay, that's fine. But you can go to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. We're all experts of logic. The very first line states, a logic consists of a formal semantics and language. That's just literally a language. Like everyone in logic knows it's a language made up by humans. It's just a formal language because it's describing reality, and that's it. There's nothing special to it. Everyone who invented logic knows this, and we know it for several concrete reasons. One is that logic has problems. It's not perfect. There are mistakes with logic, specifically Gödel's incompleteness theorem 1 and 2 and the Lynch-Guinski-Skolem theorem. You can just go to section
I'm sorry,
6.
sir. I thought you didn't like science. I thought you didn't like science because now you're appealing to scientific methods and scientific theory.
This isn't
Now I thought
science.
you didn't like science.
No, this is philosophy. So not
Is
the
this
same
philosophy? Great. Let's talk about philosophy then, shall
again,
we?
wait. So section 6 of the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy on classical logic says the right logic ? And it goes through a list of problems in logic. We know from these problems that logic is just a human language. It is a made up thing from humans because it has the same problems as any other made up language. So we know logic is a language. It's not perfect. If it was the mind of God, well, then we know the mind of God is flawed like a human mind because it has the same problems as a human language. There was something else you brought up about science. Science is a separate thing. Science is the testability. It's not about a priori knowledge. So I haven't brought up science yet. I do value science.
Great, sir. So since laws of logic don't change over time, and laws of logic, like the law of identity, is a necessity of the physical world, did you know,
Wait,
sir,
no,
that
it's
you
not.
cannot? I'm sorry, sir. Please be quiet.
Well,
Please remain silent.
You made an
I know it's
assumption
very
there.
difficult for people like you that don't understand science to be quiet when somebody that does
No.
know what they're talking about
You said a
is
premise.
speaking.
You said you
So
presented
please,
a
I'm going
premise.
to go ahead and lower your volume, and I'm going to continue, sir.
You made
Again,
a premise.
laws of logic are a necessity.
You're not gonna take over the debate, Mr. Batman.
So
TJump.
yeah, I wanted to put in there. He said that the law of identity is a necessity for reality. Like, no, it's descriptive. It's a language thing we made up. It's just a human identity. If there's no humans, there's no law of identity. It's just a description of reality. So that is not required for reality at all. And so that premise that he presented is false. You don't need that.
Laws of logic can change over time. I'm not even listening to him anymore, and I can refute his argument. You see, laws of logic don't change over time. They are a necessity of the physical world. And Chad, you know what?
No.
You didn't mute him when he was speaking over me. You're a hypocrite, sir. That's why I didn't like this server before, and I'm going to be leaving it when I'm done today. The fact of the matter is, sir, Again, the laws of logic are an absolute necessity of the physical world. In order for you to have chemical reactions, this is why I asked you about your mind thing, sir. You said you had thoughts in your mind. In order for your mind to work, you must have something called a transmitter neuron, a receiver neuron, a synapse, and a signal from which the signal is sent across.
No, you
Now,
don't.
all of these have to be identifiable in the physical world, and you cannot do
No,
that
no,
without the law of identity.
no,
Now,
you
sir,
don't.
this
There's
law of identity you even
no.
acknowledged
So
is
there's two
it
things
pre-exists the
I want to
physical
address.
world. So you have refuted your own argument. Now,
No.
once again, sir, I need you to justify
So
why these laws of logic don't change over time. Matter of fact, I'm going to open it up. Any natural law whatsoever, laws of logic, laws of physics, laws of chemistry, laws of mathematics, laws of thermodynamics, all of these laws
okay.
are eternal,
No.
universal, and
No, they're not.
unchanging. And because they do exist in our physical world, they must have an eternal, universal, and unchanging lawgiver. Now, sir, I'm
Nope.
going to raise your volume, so hopefully I can be able to hear you this time. But I tell you what, sir, this is not going to work if it's going to be a one-sided conversation.
Okay, so yeah, all of that's false. Like again, you're just disagreeing
What
with
is your
everyone in
definition of
science.
truth?
Wait, no, I gotta address all the things you said there. So, no, you
Okay,
don't need
and what I'll do
neurons for
is I'll go ahead
consciousness.
and mute
You
myself.
don't need
Let's see
neurons
how
for
I can-
consciousness.
there
That's
we go.
only if materialism is true. Materialism isn't a part of my argument there. Like idealism could be true, so we could have pure consciousness, and then consciousness could still exist. You don't need materialism for consciousness. Idealism is a possibility. Dualism is a possibility. So no, it is not necessary to have those things for consciousness. So that thing, that was false. That's, I mean, everyone in philosophy grants that it's false that you necessarily need physicalism. The next thing is that, again, the laws of logic are purely descriptive. They're a language thing. It's like English. The world can exist perfectly fine without English. The world can exist perfectly fine without logic. Logic is just a way to describe reality. It can't, reality exists necessarily. Reality is a necessity of all existing things. It has to be there. But the laws of logic are just descriptions of reality. They don't do anything. They're not prescriptive. Again, accepted by everyone in philosophy. It's just a descriptive language. The first sentence, classical logic, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. There is no necessity of the laws of logic. It's just they describe things. And there are different laws of logic. There are different logics. There's intuitionistic logic, many-valued logic, quantum logic.
I'm sorry, sir. How did you identify those logic without the law of identity?
They have different laws.
Oh, really, sir?
Yes.
See, here's the problem. You are utilizing these laws. And here's what you're doing. You're
What? No, I
sucking
didn't. What are you
down
talking about?
air. And the whole time you're sucking down air, you're saying, hey, guess what? There is no air. While the whole time you're breathing air to keep your body alive, you're putting words in the air so I can hear them. And the whole time your argument is there is no air. I'm sorry, sir.
No.
That doesn't work.
No, that
Science
wasn't my
wants to
argument at
know
all.
how things work, why they work the
Why are
way
you
they
bringing up
do,
science
and
again?
what they are contingent upon. Now, sir, please, let's have a logical discussion here. I would like for you to justify why these laws that you know cannot change over time, that are necessities in the physical world, where do these laws come from? See, this is cause and effect. This is another one of those pesky laws that don't change over time. Now, one of these pesky laws that doesn't change over time, again, is cause and effect. Every effect
that
must have an
does.
adequate cause.
No.
You, sir, are an effect. Time, space, and matter is an effect. So, sir, I need you to justify, using the law of cause and effect, what would be the adequate cause of these laws of logic? That would be one. What would be the cause of these laws of logic not changing over time? Because if the law of identity ever changed, if the law of non-contradiction ever changed, we wouldn't be here or be able to know about it. We wouldn't be able to complain about it because we would not be alive.
Wrong.
The third one would be, why are these laws going to be here again tomorrow so we can have this party one more time?
So again, this is all addressed in just philosophy 101. Laws of logic are descriptive. They describe the way reality is. The reason they don't change is you're interrupting again. So they don't exist. They're a priori. So there's this term in philosophy called a priori, and it means that it's known without any reference to the external world. It means science is irrelevant. It's not about change. There is no law of causation. There is no law of cause and effect. That is not a thing anywhere in any philosophy or science. It's purely made up. We don't actually know what causation is. There are many different theories of causation. One of them is Hume's rejection of causation. So no, causation isn't required at all. It's completely abstract. So no, the laws of logic don't need to be the same. They can change. Like there's, again, multiple logics that were not invented by me. I didn't invent any of these. These are invented by professional philosophers who actually understand logic, unlike you. So there's intuitionistic, many-valued, quantum, fuzzy logic. All of those logics exist. Those are real logics
Actually,
by real
sir,
philosophers.
I'm a teacher, and I understand a lot more than you think I do.
I doubt it. So again, these are professional philosophers who just understand logic, all wrote these other logics that don't use, that reject the one or more of the standard laws. Like paraconsistent logic rejects the law of non-contradiction. It says there can be true logical contradictions somewhere in certain cases. It rejects the law of non-contradiction, and it's perfectly valid logic. It can describe reality. It is perfectly fine. There's no problem with that being true. If reality doesn't entail logical contradictions, we can still exist. There's no problem with that. Not an issue. So your premise there is false, that they have to always be the same, and then if they change, somehow we're going to stop existing. Like, no.
Okay. So once again, sir, you still have not answered any questions on why these laws exist, because we observe them in the physical world.
I did answer
They
that.
do not change over time, and they're going to have to be here tomorrow. Now,
I
sir,
did answer that.
again, let me ask you a question. What is information?
What is information? It is a change in entropy. It's a representation
No, sir,
of
we're not
entropy.
talking about that. You said that these laws were made up by man.
Yes.
What is information? Is information specified complex arrangement of symbols that performs a function or conveys a message utilizing a transmitter or
No.
receiver?
No, the definition of information in physics is just a measure of entropy.
Okay, sir. Then here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to teach you a little something today. Information, especially when we're talking about genetics, is specified complex arrangement of symbols. In the genetic world, this would be G, T, A, and C. Now, since we know that this specified complex arrangement of symbols performs a function, it actually makes you who you are. Your DNA causes you to be who you are. Now, sir, the problem with your whole mentality here is you have rejected reality, which can only come from the living God. And that living God is an eternal, universal, unchanging lawgiver God. Because let's look at time, space, and matter. This is why you don't want to look at time, space, and matter, because you cannot justify where it comes from. I, on the other hand, can, because I have knowledge.
Is there
I
a
have
question
a
in
plethora
there? Are
of
you
knowledge,
just
sir, and I'm
bloviating,
happy
or is
to
there a
share it
question?
with you. As a matter of fact, when we look at time, space, and
Question?
matter, whatever caused time, space,
You're
and matter to
preaching.
exist, by definition, must be timeless, spaceless, immaterial, all powerful, all knowing, a
yes,
loving, living,
no,
logical,
no,
lawgiver God that does not change over time. Now, sir, I'm trying
you're
to help
bloviating.
you understand
Can you
some
like
very
stick with one
elementary
question? You wanted to
scientific
ask a
positions.
question,
Now,
answer a
you can
question. Ask a
continue
question.
on in your belief system, but your
Can you ask a question, answer a question? Because you keep bloviating and you nonstop, which is a really problem, because I need to address like the points one at a time. You can have matter, spaceless, timeless, natural things without a God, no God required, mind not required. We know this from physics. There's many theories that include the amplituhedron, emergent space-time, Sean Carroll. There is no requirement for God to have a spaceless, timeless thing at all. You can have those fairly naturally, and the natural ones are actually have a basis in physics, which are grounded in things that demonstrably exist, whereas magical God properties don't. So we have those without a God, completely fine, no problem. Information, the definition of information you gave is completely wrong. Like there's no such definition. Specified complexity is completely made up and ad hoc. It doesn't work. We can prove it doesn't work mathematically. It fails because it leads to a Berry paradox, as it conflates Shannon information and Kolmogorov information. If you actually Google Shannon information theory, which does give you a definition of information, it's a measure of changes in entropy. That's what it is. Same in physics. Or physics is just entropy itself. So your definition of information is wrong. It's not used in any academic field. And you don't need to have a mind be spaceless and timeless. That's not a theory in physics. That's
You
not
keep
one of them.
cutting out.
Yeah, it's probably because of the storm. I can't really do much about that.
I don't know why you keep appealing to science without knowing anything about the scientific method, sir.
I
You see,
do know the
you
scientific
don't
method.
seem to understand that science wants to know how things work, why they work the way they do, and what they are contingent upon.
I do know
Sir,
that. Like,
your
what?
genetics is contingent upon a lawgiver God, because
No.
without chemical reactions and chemical compounds, and these are laws of chemistry, then you cannot explain why your body works the way it does. Now, I don't know, sir,
Yes, I
where you
can.
went to
Yes, I can do
school
that.
or if you went to school, but the fact of the matter is that when we're talking about information and the law of identity,
Can you make an
you
argument
said
instead of
that the
just
law of
bloviating,
identity
please?
is man-made. Let me show you what happens
Can you
when
make
man
an
makes
argument
up
or
the law of
something?
identity as he goes along. I'm going to give you a sentence, and I want you to tell me the meaning behind this
Can you make
sentence.
an
Are you
argument?
ready?
Can you
Here we
can you
go.
make an argument?
Pizza flies easy over the West, therefore much. Harley Quinn, Batman. What did I say to you, sir? What was the message of that sentence?
Language is arbitrary. You can make it mean whatever you want.
Yes, it
So
was
again,
very
but go back,
arbitrary
go
because
back,
you don't seem to
go back,
understand
go
that
back,
we don't
go
get to
back,
define things.
go back,
The law of
go
identity
back.
define things.
No, it
Now,
doesn't. Go
sir,
back,
Go
now,
back.
go back.
again,
So,
sir, the law of
Batman,
identity
you got to stop.
defines
You got to
things.
stop.
You don't
bring
get to
up too many
define
points. You're
things.
bringing up too many points here.
You don't get to
Batman,
define things, sir.
Batman,
Hang on.
Batman, you
He
got to
keeps
stop.
talking over me,
gotta
Chad.
stop.
Why is that allowed to happen?
Because
You
you're
mute
bringing
me
up
on
too
a
many
heartbeat,
points.
sir. Why are you not muting him when he's talking over me, sir? What is the problem?
Go back.
Why are you doing this,
Yeah,
Chad?
one at a time. One at a time, brothers.
So Batman, you
I'm
gotta
about,
you gotta
to
stop
dump out
bloviating.
of this one
Batman,
because apparently there's a hypocrite in the room that will mute
Batman,
one participant and not the other.
Batman.
Now, again, if you're
Batman.
going to mute one, then you need to mute them all.
Batman,
Okay.
could you stop?
Again, the fact of the matter is he will not answer the question.
Into dumpster fire. Stop griefing me. I'm going to mute both of you, and we're going to get this squared away real fast. This is simple. Oh, thank you. That was I told both of you no monologuing and be charitable.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Just want to say that how is it that you guys are so smart but can't even handle one conversation? You got to have some kind of sense of humility, patience. I mean, there's like 60 people watching here, 70, and you guys can't even have a conversation. Like TJump, I'm not even sure what you're trying to postulate. Like, I have a question.
Beep. Where's Matt? Yes, Jersey.
What?
Well, I guess that's the end.
Did Batman run away?
Yeah, he ran away.
Why was Batman muted, but the
Because Batman kept bloviating. He wouldn't actually you need to bring up a point. He just kept speaking like here is what I believe. You can't do this or this or this or this, but then he just kept speaking. You have to say to present an argument, you have to say you can't do this or can you do this? Or here's an argument I present against your position, and then let the opponent see, can I address that or can't I address that? Just saying, you can't do that, therefore I'm right, isn't an argument. That doesn't help your position. And that's all he was doing. He just kept saying, you can't do this, therefore I'm right. And then he wouldn't let me speak. He'd go on to a different point. And I kept trying to stop him, like, go back. You got to give me a chance to address what you just said so I can counter that. You can't just say, well, you can't do that, therefore I'm right. That's not how an argument works. So that was the problem. That's why I needed to try and bring him back to his original statement. And he wasn't letting me do that. That was kind of a problem.
Well, TJump, why couldn't you just allow him to make whatever he chose to say, make his point, and then you respond without interrupting him?
Because he didn't let me.
Yeah, bro, you're
he would say one
interrupting him,
thing.
man.
Yeah, I'm always going to interrupt him if he brings up a point, he asserts it as true, and then asks a different question. That's called the Mote and Bailey fallacy. You're just assuming, here, I'm going to say this is true, and then try and make a different point over here, and you address this point. Like, no, you have to stop at the point you made, and the assertion you made, and then that I get to address. That's what I need to address first.
Well, why couldn't you simply respond to him afterwards after he made his point?
I did many times, and then he came back and said, "Oh no, you're not answering my questions." So I did exactly do
No,
that.
no, what you did was you interrupted him.
No,
many
no,
times.
no. You don't get to tell me what I did. It's because I'm better at this than you. So
Well,
what I
everybody
did
can
was-
hear it. Everybody can go
what
back
I
and hear
did
it.
was I addressed his points one at a time, and then he said, "No, you're not answering my question." Like, no, I was answering his original assertions, which were false, in his statements, which he didn't want me to address, before answering his question. And so I had to.
Well, I don't think you liked it when Darth Darkins was interrupting you, but you were acting exactly like Darth Darkins in this
No,
debate.
I'm sorry, you're an idiot. I was not doing that. So again, I was specifically addressing his points. Like he said, he asserted I cannot do this. I was like, yes, I can. Let me address that one point. And then he objected, oh no, you're not answering my question. And so that's why I had to interrupt him and say, no, we have to go one point at a time. He didn't know how the conversation works.
It should be allowed equal time for each speaker. I agree with TJump on this. A method like a chess clock would be good.
Well, no, listen, I like to let it keep going, and then like until they start over talking each other horribly bad and monologuing. And monologuing, that's all pretty much what I heard during this debate. Is it really wasn't much of.
Everybody knew it was going to be a clown show anyway. Batman is a clown.
Pretty much.
True.
No, T-Jump's the clown.
Sure.
Jump, can I-
What side of spectrum?
The Joker is a clown.
Question for T-Jump. I just want to move the.
What's your
Move
question?
it along. Hey T-Jump. Just on your Darth conversation. It seems that your response to Darth's question on intelligibility, your answer was reality, right? I mean, doesn't it seem kind of circular though?
What?
You're gonna derive intelligibility with reality itself.
I don't know what exactly you mean. Like intelligibility is the ability to be processed by the mind. Like we can think things. It is ability to be understood by the mind. So the fact that our mind does understand something, it's possible in many different ways. Like it could be dualism, idealism, materialism. There's lots of different ways to do that. I don't know what question you're specifically referring to.
You fucking nigger, fucking.
Oh.
Yeesh. What?
What was your defeater for Darth?
Well, my defeater was my opening argument, is that I can know things without any reference to a god, and he never actually objected to that. He didn't say he never objected to my opening statement. So I can say, I think, therefore I am. I know reality is reality. That's law of identity. I can say there's one reality, that's math. So I can ground math and logic and rationality without any reference to a god. And nothing he said ever countered my opening statement. He asked, well, what is the nature of reality?
Well, if your opening statement is predicated on I think, therefore I am, then your opening statement itself is circular. Because you have to be able to think in order to make that statement.
No, the thinking is the thing we're experiencing. We're explaining that phenomenon. If thinking is occurring, we're explaining that phenomenon. It's not circular.
No, but the cogito assumes first order.
No, the cogito doesn't assume anything. We experience.
It assumes that one's experiences are first person present.
No, it doesn't.
Mike, you have horrible feedback. There, that's horrible.
Is it better now? Testing.
That wasn't directed at you. That was directed at.
Right. So yeah, the cogito doesn't assume anything. It's just we have experience. That is just a fact. It's a brute fact. We have experience. And then so I think is true. That's instantly true because it's a reference to something occurring in the world. Why it's true or how it's true, whether it's first person or whether it's a conglomerate of kinds of experiences, doesn't make a difference. It doesn't matter to the argument. So it doesn't assume anything about whether it's first person present or anything like that. It just says I think is a thing. Thinking is a thing.
So I like to get like a better person for you to debate, T-Jump. I think it would be a really good debate between you and Matt Yester. I would like to set that up if you.
Sure, go for it.
That would be hilarious.
Sure, go for it. I have no idea who it is.
I think it would be a really good debate.
Go for it. I'm up for whatever.
He's not on right now. I mean, this is like the after
you have to,
show now.
For sure, yeah. You'll set it up and you can send me the date or whatever in Discord messages.
Well, Matt Yester's pretty good, but don't you think Jonathan's better at debating atheists than Matt Yester?
You can do both. Why not?
You can debate Jonathan right now. Is even he. Well, too bad Mr. Batman was kind of a.
Well, I have a question for you, TJump. Before mankind existed, were there 9 planets in the solar system?
Non-planets? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, were there 9 planets?
9
including
planets.
Pluto. You know how they some scientists say,
Yeah,
well, today they don't include Pluto. But assuming Pluto is a planet, would you say there were 9 planets before mankind existed?
Yes, I think so. I'd say that for I think several billion years there were, and then there were less than that.
Do you know that mathematics is based on logic?
No, it's not actually. That was proven false by Russell's paradox.
Well, so logic has nothing to do with mathematics, huh?
Logic is math.
You can't reduce logic to math or math to logic. That was proven by Russell's paradox. They tried to do that.
So they have absolutely nothing to do with each other, I see, huh?
You can't reduce one to the other. They have nothing to do with one another.
Okay.
That's not what I said. So again,
whatever you say.
This was proven by Gottlieb Frege. You can just Google Russell's paradox.
Sure.
Frege.
Of course.
Pretty well known in philosophy.
What was the point of asking him the question about the planets?
Well, it's obviously that mathematics is logic. It is associated with logic, and to suggest that it's not is utterly ridiculous.
Okay.
Does anybody got questions for?
I got one question. TJump, do you want there to be a God?
Do I want there to be a God?
Rather God exist or not?
I would like the best of all possible worlds to exist, and if there was a God to create that, then I would want that God. But if there's a God who wouldn't create that, then it's irrelevant one way or the other.
Okay.
I got one for T.
Go for it.
TJump, your postulation that you don't need a reference to God, right, for intelligibility. What do you base that on?
I don't need a reference to God for intelligibility. So my argument, I think, therefore I am, I can know logic and math without any reference to a God. So my argument that justifies rationality, intelligibility, and logic exists. I think, therefore I am. I know what reality is reality.
Something like, let's say you take a Chinese man that's unknown of Christianity is making ability, yet he's unaware of the.
I have no idea what you're saying. You can know things, you can have rationality and intelligibility without any reference to a God. But if God doesn't exist, we can still have rationality and intelligibility. You don't need a God for that.
But what do you base that on? I'm not.
Again, the argument, I think, therefore I am, does not begin, there is a God. You don't need God to have that. It's like saying, there is a box. What is in the box? Could it be a rabbit? Yes, there could be a rabbit in the box. It could also be a lizard or a coffee mug. You don't need a God to be in the box. It's not like by definition that there is a box, therefore there is a rabbit in it. Because there's lots of things that could fit in the box. So the fundamental nature of reality could be a God, yes, or it could be naturalistic pantheism, just an eternal and powerful nature. That's fine. Or polytheism and many gods, or transtheism where something's above a God, or panentheism where a God killed itself. There's lots of different possibilities. You don't need a God for intelligibility. There's many different possibilities that could all give you intelligibility.
Seems that you're looking for freedom.
I have no idea what that means. Freedom?
I'll explain, because it seems that like also in virtue of the definition of God, it's kind of like a trap. Like by definition, God would exist because it's so cleverly constructed. Like it doesn't have, it's not a thing, right? It's like a metaphysical concept that it's really difficult to disprove. So you kind of don't have a.
I have no idea what you mean. Like God is a non-physical mind is usually, that is what a God is. So I'm saying that you don't need that. You don't need a non-physical mind to explain reality. That reality could be just purely material, just nothing but matter and energy and motion, and that can explain intelligibility just fine. You don't need a non-physical mind to have intelligibility.
Well, what is the ultimacy of reality?
Could be lots of different things.
So you don't know what it is?
No, no one knows what it is. That's not something we
Well,
know.
hold on, wait. How do you know no one knows? I mean, that just seems like you're just saying that.
Because we don't have a way to demonstrate absolutes like that. It doesn't exist. The only
Well,
absolute
hold
we can
on,
know
but
is
are you
what's defined.
assuming? But are you assuming that someone has to be able to demonstrate something to someone else in order to know it themselves?
Yes, you do. That's kind of the point, is that you have to be able to justify your claim, not just for yourself, but for anybody. Like just your own private knowledge, some kind of thing. There's no way to verify that your own private knowledge is just a delusion. The first thing you have to do is differentiate. Yes, I can justify it. So the first thing you have to do is you have to differentiate, is my belief imaginary or is it real? You have to differentiate imagination from reality. And you can't do that for the fundamental nature of reality. We don't have a means to do that yet.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, so you're stuck in basically solipsism, right? You can't know whether your reality is imaginary, right?
No, we can demonstrate many things are not imaginary. Like science does a pretty good job of that, but science doesn't tell us what the fundamental nature of reality is yet.
Well, I mean, yeah, I suppose you're assuming that science would be a good tool for understanding the fundamental nature of reality, right?
Maybe, maybe not. Like, so whatever the fundamental nature of reality is, there's lots of different possibilities. You would need to differentiate, is this possibility that we are imagining, is it just an imaginary thing, or does it correspond to reality? And to do that, you're going to need some methodology to differentiate imaginary things from real things. Science can work to do that. So if you have a novel testable predictions that the fundamental nature of reality is all matter and energy and nothing else, and you could use that to make predictions about things, that would work. You could use science to verify the fundamental nature of reality. I just don't know any predictions that would entail that.
I mean, would you agree that, like, if the ultimacy of reality is revelatory and honest and wanted to make himself known, then you could know about him? Is that possible?
Sure.
Do you agree with that?
Sure, yes, that is possible.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, that's always been the Christian claim, as far as I understand. But I think the counter to that is I don't know, and neither do you, right? Which doesn't really make sense.
No, that isn't the counter to that. So the counter to that is that you have an assertion. You have asserted that you know that the fundamental nature of reality is Christian, and then you'd have to show what method can you use to differentiate that belief from just being imaginary. That's the counter. And unless you can demonstrate a methodology that can differentiate, then you don't have a justified belief in believing that it is the fundamental nature of reality. It's just an imaginary thing, no more supported than saying the spaghetti monster is fundamental.
Well, I mean, I think that is a bit of a what do you call it? Like a straw man. Because the spaghetti monster. I mean, is the spaghetti monster like the true ultimacy of reality, or is that just more of a meme kind of thing? You know what I mean?
Well, so there's lots of different possibilities of what the fundamental nature of reality is. You can assert that it's a god, and I can assert it is the spaghetti monster. Whether or not it's intended to be true or not is irrelevant. It's equally possible that the fundamental nature of reality is the spaghetti monster. The fact that it's made up by human minds does not make it any more or less likely. The question is how do we differentiate the two? How can we say one of these is more likely to be true than the other one? And unless you have a methodology that you can use to differentiate between imagination and reality, then you can't say that your God belief is more likely than the spaghetti monster. That's kind of the point.
Well, could we say that anything that's made up by human minds really cannot be the ultimacy of reality, right? Because it's made up.
No, not necessarily. It's possible that our minds could actually correspond to reality. Like, for example, if you imagine a cup, like your imagination of the cup does correspond to reality. There was a cup also that exists outside of your imagination, but you also have your imagination envision the cup. So you could envision a God in your imagination, and it could be a God in reality. So your imagination could correspond to reality.
But what came first? I think that imagining the cup is something you do because you've seen the cup. The spaghetti monster, you know, it's not like it ontologically exists and then you imagine it. You're saying we can imagine it as the ultimacy of reality, right?
No, it could have existed as the ultimacy of reality forever, and we just happened to imagine it as a joke, and we happened to get it right. So how we came to the idea doesn't.
Highly unlikely, right?
Yes, that is highly unlikely, but that isn't the question. So this isn't about likelihood. This is about, is it possible? No. If it has like even a 0.0000001% chance, then it's possible. And that's the question: is why is your belief in a God more likely to be true than my belief in the spaghetti monster? The fact that somebody had an imaginary idea about God existing thousands of years ago is no more likely to be true than me having an imaginary conception of the spaghetti monster existing. Both of those are equally likely to be true.
Yeah. I mean, I don't believe I may not be able to demonstrate, because I don't really believe there's like the solipsistic barrier and the epistemic barrier, so I can't demonstrate. But I would say, according to me, that it is impossible that the flying spaghetti monster is the ultimacy of reality. You're saying it's possible. I'm saying it's not. You know?
Well, I could make the same argument and just say it's impossible that the Christian God is the ultimacy of reality. So you can make the argument either way.
No. Why would you say that?
Logical contradictions in its nature would be a big one.
What, mercy and justice?
Problem of evil, the contradictions in omnipotence and omniscience, the contradictions in omniscience in itself, Wittgenstein's paradox of omniscience. All of the properties of God's nature are incoherent and contradictory, like saying that there is a mind outside of physical nature. That doesn't make any sense. We have no evidence of that. That isn't contradictory. It's just an inductive argument. But there's lots of different ways.
Does all of that?
What?
Does all of that depend upon your reasoning being at least somewhat valid? Which, you know, you're only going to be able to use your reasoning in order to try and justify it, which is circular, right?
No, it depends on your definition of God. So this is all, it's an internal critique. It says you define God to be this way. And by that definition, there are contradictions in its own definition. You've said there is a square circle that is the fundamental nature of reality. And I can be like, square circles are logical contradictions, so that's probably not the fundamental nature of reality.
No, but what I'm saying is, honestly, if you're honest, which you are, like, you are using your reasoning, or you're being unreasonable, but if you're using your reasoning in this process and you don't know it's valid, then you don't know any of your conclusions are valid to even 0%, right?
If we don't know our reasoning is valid, so again, we can justify our reasoning. I think, therefore I am, reality is reality. So we have.
But you're
You're
assuming it's valid when you do that, though.
No, that's an argument, so that's not an assumption. Assumption is something that's true before you make an argument.
Well, I mean, how do you know your reasoning is valid before you make the argument?
Because I exist, and I can use my reasoning to describe my existence.
So, what, everyone that exists has valid reasoning?
Has a valid basis of reasoning, yes.
What, their existence?
Yes.
So, I mean, you know, Muslims who blow people up, you know, to get 72 virgins, their reasoning is valid.
Their basis for reasoning itself is valid. Their basis for religion isn't valid. Those are two different things.
How do you know your reasoning about your reasoning is valid?
Because I exist, and I can use my reasoning to describe the fact I exist.
No, but I mean, what? Because you exist, therefore your reasoning is valid, is what you're saying.
No, I exist, and then I can use my reasoning to describe the fact I exist. That's why.
But how do you know? How do you know when you do that that your reasoning is valid? Just because, like, I'm saying that your conclusion is correct. You do exist, right?
Yeah.
But I think your way of trying to get there is viciously circular. I can't see how that works.
Well, I exist because I can experience myself existing. That's not. There's no logic there. That's just a brute fact. We experience it. It's not justified by logic.
And what is the context of that fact? That you have none, right?
I don't know what that means. Like, context doesn't make any sense there. You have no context.
Well, I mean, you're saying, what makes it a fact? Because you say it's a fact, or I don't understand what you mean.
Because I experience it. Like, I literally experience existing. It is a thing in reality necessarily.
But that sounds like a Catholic or something, saying like, you know, I experienced the Mother Mary coming down. You know, that just sounds like that.
Well, their experience is necessarily real. They had an experience. So that's the part that we do know for a fact exists is experience. Like I'm definitely experiencing something. So that necessarily
How do you know?
exists.
How do you know that?
Because I'm experiencing it right now.
So
Qualia.
that's circular. I know I'm experiencing it because I'm
No.
experiencing it. That's like
Arguments are circular. An argument says that a circular argument is when you use a premise in the conclusion. But my experience isn't an argument. My experience is a fact. It is a thing that exists in reality. So this isn't an argument. It is a fact. It's like saying there is an apple. That's not an argument. It's just a description of a thing that exists. There's a thing that exists, which is my experience. Go ahead.
So if I ask how you know there's an apple, you'll say because there's an apple, I guess, or because I experienced the apple.
Yeah. So the apple we could know through science. We wouldn't have absolute certainty for the apple. We do have absolute certainty for our experience.
I mean, would you have certainty that you don't have certainty?
I don't know what you mean. Do I have certainty that I don't have certainty?
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
It's like, I mean, how sure are you that you can't be sure?
I'm 100% certain I have experience.
What, like that's how are you grounding a universal absolute like that in a solipsistic, framework?
Because I exist. So in solipsism, you know you exist. So in solipsism, you're also 100% certain that you exist.
I mean, how do you identify the self within solipsism?
It's the thing you're experiencing. It's the qualia experience you have.
I mean, how do you make intelligible sense of, say, you versus not you?
You can't. That's all you can say is that you have experience, and you and the experience are synonymous terms in that logic. You can just say there is a quality experience, and that is me.
No, but you're saying that you can't really differentiate between you and not you, but then you say, but I have the experience. You see how that doesn't really make sense?
No. So the experience is you. Those are synonymous terms, like saying a bachelor is an unmarried man. So if you have an experience, it's possible that the you is actually a bunch of different people all experiencing the same thing. That's possible too. But for certain, what you can know is that there is an experience, and that experience is just by definition you. There could be lots of other things that are also you or also them or lots of different people. But the only thing you can know with absolute certainty is you have an experience, and that experience is by definition you.
I mean, and where does this knowledge come from? That like you're claiming that as an absolute. It seems
you experience
right?
it. So again,
where's that come from?
You experience it. It's the quality experience. You have an experience. It's the thing that exists.
And you know this through experience, I guess.
You know it because it exists. It is a thing that exists in reality. How you know it is.
Yeah. So you have experience because in reality you have experience.
No, you have experience. Period.
No, but if I ask you to justify that, how you know that?
No, it's just you have experience, period. That is the justification. It is a thing that exists. It is a true fact.
I mean, but that is honestly, that is worse than a Catholic, right? That's just like saying,
no,
Mary is the mother of God or something, and then period. Like no argument, no justification. It's just a fact. Deal with that.
Yes. So that's how qualia works, is that you have an experience of the world, and then saying qualia exists is a true fact because it corresponds to reality.
It's
So if someone says that, it's self-evident that the ultimacy of reality is personal, otherwise we couldn't know it, you wouldn't accept that argument, right? But then you're going to, you're pushing things that are weaker than that, a lot weaker than that.
So we can't say something synthetic about reality. That's not something we can say. We can say there is a truth that we have experienced. That is something we can justify. So I can say, it is necessarily the case that I have experience because that's just a fact of things that is true. It's a fact of reality. But we couldn't then
what is a fact?
What did you say?
What is a fact? I know what a fact is, but I just want to understand, if we have the same understanding, right? It's, knowledge about state of affairs, right? Something that is the case, a truth.
Yeah,
right?
It's a description of reality. It's a sentence that corresponds to reality.
An accurate one, yeah. So how would you know something that corresponds to reality? How do you know when that's happening?
In the case of my existence, is because I exist. It's like Reality is the stuff which exists, and I have a quality experience which exists, and so they both exist. They're a part of reality.
So how do you know
So are you saying? Go on, sorry.
how do you know your experience comports to reality?
Well, I don't know my experience comports to reality, but I do know I have experience, and the fact that I have experience does comport to reality. So everything I experience could be a delusion. That's perfectly fine. But the fact that I have experience can't be a delusion. It must exist.
Well, wait, but hold on. If you could be delusional, then how do you know that your reasoning about your experience isn't just a bunch of nonsense?
Because my reasoning about my experience can't be wrong. I can't say I exist and be wrong.
No, but things just because you're coming to a true conclusion, right, doesn't mean that your justification is valid. What I'm saying, you could be insane, right? Maybe every word out of your mouth, every thought is just absolute nonsense.
You're bringing up the argument again. The argument is irrelevant here. It's just the fact I have experience. That fact is necessarily true. Whether or not I can justify it, whether or not I'm delusional, whether or not I can have logic, any of that is irrelevant. This is just a fact of reality.
So, but that's a bold-faced assertion, isn't it?
No. Again, it is a description of a thing that I directly experience.
Is it an assertion?
No, it's an experience. I literally experience that I have an experience.
But do you assert that?
So it's not an assertion. Technically, from your perspective, you can't know I have an experience, but I can know I have an experience. So from my perspective, it's not an assertion. It's just a descriptive fact. It's just words that describe the thing that exists. I know? What did you say?
How do I know that?
How do you know that I exist? You can't know that with absolute certainty. You'd have to use induction.
How do you know that?
How do you know what?
How do you know that I don't?
How do I? You cut out. How do I know that you don't what?
How do you know that? How do you know that I don't know that you exist?
How do I know that I have no idea? I don't know that you exist. I can't know that with absolute certainty. I could grant that, like I would say that you do know I exist by induction. Like I know you exist through induction to the scientific method. So I have methodologies to justify that with induction, not absolute certainty. I can't have absolute certainty with that, but I do have justification for that belief.
Hey, so in that case, why would you make the claim that I can't?
Can't what? You cut out at can't.
I think we're conflating a couple terms like exist and experience and the problem of hard solipsism. It's all kind of getting jumbled here. So maybe that's where some of the confusion lies.
TJump, I'm not attacking you, but it just seems weird to me to hear someone say, I know I'm having an experience, but then it doesn't seem to me you're justifying it. You're just saying it.
Right. So I have an experience. That's a fact. Like if you want me to justify it to you, I can't prove to you I have an experience, but for me necessarily it's true. Like I know I have an experience. Like
why do you guys doubt existence?
Good question.
So is the statement I have experience, therefore I have experience?
No. There's just I have experience. Period. There's no therefore.
I mean, well, what would you say if someone said, Christ rose from the dead, and I can't justify it to you, and it's just a fact, and that's it.
Again, that's a synthetic fact, so it's not a fact about a necessary truth. It's like saying the fact that I have experience is, again, describing something I am literally experiencing right now. So if you were literally experiencing Jesus rising from, I see Jesus rising from the dead, I could grant that. I could grant that you see Jesus rising from the dead. But then to say that fact is true about the world and not about you, that's the problem. So you can say there are facts that are true about you. That's fine. But you can't say there's facts that are true about the world because it's a separate thing.
Well, what's the difference? I mean, when you get into all the solipsism and stuff like that, I could see something in the world with my own eyes, and it could be a solipsistic, vision. And then even your experience that you claim to be having, right, ultimately, even though it would be solipsistic, it would be subjective, right? Your claim that you exist is subjective by nature, right?
Yes, it is necessarily subjective. Only I can know it with absolute certainty.
So it's just your opinion. Except me, it's not necessarily like
No,
it doesn't.
no, no. It's not like I can stop existing with my change of mind. Like, no, my opinion has no effect on it. So it's not. It's subjective in the fact that only I can know it, but it's not subjective in the fact that it's contingent on a mind opinion.
So you're saying it's an objective fact that you exist, or a subjective fact?
An objective fact.
Wait, which one? Oh, objective. Okay, so
but it's subjectively known. So it's objectively ontology, objective ontology, subjective epistemology.
Okay, fair enough. No, that's okay. That's reasonable.
So TJump, from your own perspective, you're not concerned with having a justification for the intuition you have that you're having an experience?
There's no intuition. It's a literal experience. It's not an intuition.
In virtue of what are you defining?
I have no idea what you just said.
In virtue of what are you defining it?
Defining what? So I have an experience is just a fact about reality. I'm not defining. It's the thing I'm having. It's like sense experience, qualia experience. There's called qualia in philosophy. There's just this thing that we have, which is a representation of reality, as far as we can tell, that there is some kind of idea in our heads of experience. Like we sense stuff.
And you're okay with not having to really have that be justified, right?
It's justified by the fact that I have it. That is the justification. It's a fact.
So
that's not a justification.
Yes, it
again,
is.
what is experience?
No, that's not a justification.
Yes, it is. You can go bother philosophers with that if you want to go argue against I think therefore I am. Go feel free to publish some papers on that one.
Are you familiar with Plantinga's? Are you familiar with Alvin Plantinga's work on reliabilism?
Yes, I am. I am very familiar with Alvin Plantinga's work.
Yeah, so one of the conditions that Alvin Plantinga teases out for his warranted Calvin Aquinas model. One of the conditions he teases out is that you need reliable cognitive faculties, but you also need an environment that's conducive to producing true beliefs within those cognitive faculties. So unless you know that you're in that an environment that's apt for forming truth beliefs in your cognitive faculties, then you can't justify the experiences your cognitive faculties produce.
No, so that's false. Plantinga's position is that I think therefore I am is a properly basic belief. So that is justified purely by
no.
So
what I'm saying.
Wait, I'm not done yet. So wait, not done yet. So Plantinga's reformed epistemology is rejected by the vast majority of philosophers. So it's not right in any sense anyway. So using his epistemology to try and justify a position is like I reject his epistemology wholesale.
Okay, that might be another argument you can make. But what I'm saying is that if you're going to appeal to some sort of cognitive experience that you have, then you can't use that to justify your other beliefs.
Yes,
because
you can.
You don't know if you were in a belief conducive environment or an environment that was apt for producing true beliefs.
So again, that isn't required. That's Plantinga's presuppositions, which no one in philosophy agrees with for the most part. We don't need that. But Plantinga agrees with me. So Plantinga agrees with me about I think before I am.
No, I think Plantinga would disagree that when you try to appeal to your cognitive experiences to justify.
He agrees. He agrees. That's called a properly basic belief.
No, I understand what properly basic beliefs are, but Plantinga builds up different aspects of his externalist model, and part of the externalist model requires a truth apt environment. And Plantinga actually gives various illustrations to tease this out and help it be more intuitive.
Yeah,
so
yes,
even if
I'm
your
very aware
cognitive
that's
faculties
a version of his naturalistic argument against, or what thing is?
No, not necessarily. This is actually part of his epistemology model that he formulates.
Right. I understand that, but that's only the case if it applies to an externalist worldview, like which I think therefore I am doesn't. It doesn't say anything about what the worldview is. It doesn't make an argument about what the fundamental nature of reality is. If you're claiming that
the reason. I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you're claiming that the reality is like purely material or something, then you would need that purely material thing to create a kind of rationality to be able to justify your beliefs. That's Plantinga's argument. But I didn't make any claim about what the fundamental nature of reality was. So that isn't an objection to my argument.
Yeah, you are. You're claiming that that your own cognitive experiences are somehow objective reality, and you're using those to try to justify other claims that you make, other belief claims. And what I'm
No.
saying is that even though, wait a minute, even though the cognitive experiences you have may produce true beliefs for you, but they are not able to justify other propositions because you don't know for sure if you live in an environment that's conducive for producing true beliefs to begin with.
Again, so that's like I said, that's two different things. One is that only if you're claiming you know what the fundamental nature of reality is, does that argument apply. I'm not claiming to know that. I'm only claiming to know that I exist. Now, what I am, I don't know. I could be purely material. I could be idealistic. I could be dualistic. I have no idea. I made no claim about that anywhere in my argument. If I did make a claim that said I am purely material, then Plantinga's argument would apply, where you say, well, if you're purely material, how does a purely material thing give you rational beliefs?
No.
But we
No, this
have
is
answers to
about-
that too. So again, Plantinga's argument
No,
there
you
doesn't
don't.
work. Again, it's rejected by the majority of philosophers because we do
Just-
have
just-
that.
I will. I'll take.
Somebody has an
I'm
echo.
sorry, I'm getting an echo. Is somebody? Okay, it's gone now. I'm sorry. So what I would say about that is that when you make an assumption about based on or grounded in or justified by your cognitive experiences, you are assuming various objective conditions like entailment relationships between your beliefs and so on that you can't do unless you know that your beliefs were formed in a cognitive environment that's apt for it's directed at truth.
No, again, that is rejected. Plantinga's epistemology is wrong. It's rejected by the majority of philosophers because we do not need that.
Mm-hmm.
That is his assumption, which is false. Like we can know just based.
Well, how do you get around it? If everybody rejects it, you should be able to easily explain why it's rejected.
Yes, that's right. Because I think
Lay it
therefore I
out
am.
for
So
me.
I can, if we assume that our brain came up with a purely, completely illogical system, let's assume that our brain was developed in a non-rational way or something. The fact that I exist is still true. I think therefore I am is still true. It doesn't make a difference if my brain was rational or not. And the fact that I think therefore I am is still true. The reality is also still true. And the fact that there is one reality is also still true. So I can still get logic and math and rationality, even if my brain was developed in a completely illogical way. I still get rationality just fine. So how my brain was developed is irrelevant. So because it's like a magic 8-ball. If you shake a magic 8-ball, the answer that it comes up with could still be right, even if it's completely random. So even if our brains were developed in a completely random, non-illogical way, it can still get to the right answer. So the fact of how it was developed is irrelevant to whether or not it can have justified beliefs.
No. So just to clarify, we're not asking about if your brain was developed correctly or anything about how your brain was developed. For this particular condition of epistemology, we're assuming that your cognitive faculties are properly functioning. We're assuming that they are properly functioning and that they are reliable. Moreover, that they are reliable, they are properly functioning. But there's a third factor that we need, and that is an environment that's conducive to truth. So you could have properly functioning cognitive faculties, you could have reliable cognitive faculties, but if you're on, say, for example, a planet where
Wait, what did you say? You said an environment conducive to truth? Is that what you said?
An environment conducive for producing truth in your reliable cognitive faculties.
So
right?
that would be like how your brain developed, right? Like I don't know what you mean by that.
No. So we're assuming that your brain. So we're assuming that your cognitive faculties are reliable. We're assuming that your cognitive faculties are.
I want to know what you mean. I want to know what you mean by when you say a environment conducive to producing truth. What does that mean?
So one of a popular illustration is sometimes like, what if you're on another planet with like invisible elephants or something like that in there, and every time you hear a horn blow, so here on Earth, if you hear an elephant noise an elephant makes through their trunk, you form the belief that there's an elephant close by. But maybe on another planet, there could be like a condition where you hear the same noise and you form a belief that there's an elephant close by, but there really isn't an elephant close by. So
I'm not
what
following.
you need is an environment.
I'm not following what you're
What
saying.
you need is
again,
there could be some environments to where even if your brain is properly functioning, and even if it's reliable and it does produce true beliefs, it still wouldn't give you true beliefs because you wouldn't know if you're in the proper environment.
Okay, so give me an environment where I think therefore I am is false.
It could be any environment that produces false beliefs, that causes false beliefs to be formed.
So how can I have a belief that I exist and that belief be false?
So, for example, you could, the whole evil demon situation is an apt illustration here, right? Maybe you
no, because remember, Descartes said the evil demon could not cause him to have a belief he exists and be false. That was the one thing the evil demon couldn't ever do.
Well, I'm positive that he can do it.
How could the evil demon
if we
cause
just
me?
come up with a
So how could the evil demon cause me to believe I exist, but without me existing?
Keep in mind, we're not talking about the nature of the experience itself. We're asking if the experience is able to justify other beliefs. And what I'm saying is it can't justify other beliefs unless you have this part of it worked out, unless you know that you're in an environment that's conducive for truth.
Right. I'm saying that's false. So I can say that I think, therefore I am is true. Like I have a belief I exist, and that belief can't be false, which means I must necessarily, whatever the environment is, I don't care anything about the environment. I can use that one fact to justify other beliefs, like reality is reality. One is plus one.
You're going to have problems. So even setting aside, so you haven't, I don't think you've successfully tackled this particular issue of a belief conducive environment. But even if we put a pin in that, you're going to have problems coming up with all the necessary conditions for an I experience to begin with. You're going to have entailment. You're going to have beliefs about entailment. You're going to have beliefs about.
Those are all secondary things. Those are all descriptive language things that we make up after the fact. So we don't need any of those. We can just get rid of all of those. We can just say, I exist. I think I exist.
You say I exist, but that's only based on various other beliefs that you already have. It's not based on.
No, it's not based on any beliefs. It's based on experience. So there's no beliefs entailed at all in that. It's purely experience.
What was your experience of an entailment relationship? Is that also
I don't need entailment in relationships. I just have an experience. I exist.
To say that I exist, you have to have entailment relationships.
No,
you have to predicate I-ness to existence. You have to know something about what exists. You have to know something about identity through time.
That's language.
You don't have any of that.
That's all language.
You don't have any
of that. You can make that up. That's all language. That's not about reality.
The point is,
just make that up.
Don't forget though that we're talking about justification. How do you justify other beliefs? You can't appeal to the I exist as a justification for other beliefs. It's not a rational justification.
We start with I have an experience. There's an experience I'm having, and then I'm going to make up a language to describe this experience. That's where all the entailments come from. The entailments come from a made-up language that we made up in our head to describe this thing that we're experiencing.
You already have entailments and
no. We don't have that. So we make up entailment. We make up an idea of I want this word to describe this thing. That is all made up in our heads. It's just a figment of language. We don't need any of that.
When we say I, that is a reification of various cognitive experiences that we're having at different times and that we're applying unification to. So how do you have identity through time of an I experience? You don't unless you just assume
I didn't say anything
other
about
entailment relationships.
So no, I didn't say anything about time at all. I said I have an experience. That's it. And then I'm making up language in my head.
You should have. What you're saying is you have some basic phenomenal experience, but you don't. You can't use that to justify other beliefs.
Yes, you can.
You just can't, buddy.
I didn't say anything about time.
Can't.
Yes, you can. So I exist as a fact. Go back. So I exist as a fact, and then I'm making up this language, these entailments and the relations and the logic. All that is just made up in my head. I'm just making up arbitrary languages to describe the fact I have an experience. And then if I use this description to describe my experience, I can say, oh, look, I have descriptors, and these descriptors I can describe with other things. So if I just make up this descriptor of I, it doesn't matter what it means, I can just make it up. And then I can somebody has an echo. And then I can describe that thing with other things.
You're echoing. Hold on.
Yeah, I heard that. So
sorry about that. Go ahead.
So you can, after you have I experience, that's a thing, you can make up this language to describe that. Those made up languages are justified in and of themselves to describe the thing you're using them to describe them as. So you can justify other beliefs based off of just I experience.
That seems magical to me. Can we take a step back a second again and look at the I experience? So you have an I experience at T1, an I experience at
there's
T2,
no time.
T3.
There's no time in my argument, so I didn't have any T1, T2, nothing.
To say I exist implies a temporal plurality of experiences over time. So identity through time of an I. If you don't have that, then
it doesn't.
You don't have an actual I.
No, it doesn't in any way have anything to do with temporal time whatsoever. There's many different theories of how time works. When some have no time,
I understand. I understand there's different theories of time, but what I'm saying is that if you want to appeal to an experience to justify your views, you have to appeal to a series of experiences.
No, you don't.
Group together magically.
No, you don't. So you can just.
And I don't believe. I don't believe in that sort of atheist magic.
So you do not need to do that. That is false. You do not need to do that. You can just imagine your mind existing on its own at one particular time, t = 1, and nothing else. That experience on its own at that one particular time is sufficient to justify everything else. You do not need anything else.
These guys keep asserting that you're a solipsist, TJump, and that
he's
you
not
need
saying,
this sort of
that's not
ultimate to break you out of it.
Who is
that's what this whole
that's
claim
not
is about atheists.
That's not solipsism necessarily, by the way, unless TJump wants to claim he is.
They assert that all atheists are solipsists.
Yeah, no,
that's
they
what
are.
Shotgun isn't doing that. Shotgun isn't doing that though. That's not.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that all atheists are solipsists. I think that's a false caricature.
I don't know why you're bringing up him when Shotgun's talking to TJump. So.
Well, they're all doing that indirectly.
Yeah, they're all
like how do you
contention is quite fallible.
So wait, just
wait a minute.
There's
can I say one thing? I'm going to head out, but thanks for the good conversation, and I'll let Face of Yah go back to. I didn't mean to stomp on you guys' discussion. So
yeah, no problem. Thanks for talking. No problem. But yeah, so there's different kinds of solipsism. Solipsism isn't just one thing. There's like an ontological solipsism where you believe that you're the only thing that exists. But there's also an epistemic solipsism, which means the first thing you can know and justify knowledge based off of is your existence. That kind of solipsism, most atheists are that kind of solipsist. Most philosophers are that kind of solipsist because the way we ground knowledge is from our existence. So solipsism isn't just the belief that only you exist. There's lots of different kinds of solipsism. You can just Google solipsism on Wiki.
Which one are you teaching?
Epistemic solipsism, I believe, is the one it's called, where it says that we ground all knowledge based off of the fact that I think, therefore I am.
TJump, I have a problem with you calling it a fact. I would rather frame it as an allegation that you're having an experience.
It's a fact to me. Like I can't have an allegation that I am experiencing. I can't allegedly experience my experience.
But I just have a problem, even if I'm putting myself in your shoes, which I can easily do just putting myself in my own shoes, I still view it as an allegation because I have a problem calling something a fact with nothing that's justifying.
Those are called brute facts. Those are a thing. So it's a brute fact that I have experience. And like you can't know I have experience. Like I can't show you my experience. But it is a fact of reality that I have an experience.
Just have a problem with that. How can people get away with just saying something's a fact? No justification.
Called a brute fact. It's a thing in philosophy. So I have an experience as a brute fact. I don't know.
I guess I'm just disagreeing with philosophy then, because it doesn't make sense to me that someone can say, this is this. I don't have to justify it.
Reality is reality. I don't have to justify it.
I mean, you could say that if you want, but to me, that's like...
I've got a great example. Say someone plays the sound of a siren. You can say, I heard a police car, and that's a fact. But it's also a fact that it wasn't actually a police car.
Yes. But that can't be the case for I think, therefore I am. You can't have an experience and not have an experience. So it's possible that like you could see a horse, but actually you're just having a delusion. But you can't have a delusion and not exist. So that's not a possibility.
Well,
there's no way to...
Hold on. I mean, how do you know that the laws of logic are not variant? How do you know that they are invariant, for example?
The laws of logic are languages. They're made up by humans. They are technically variant.
Okay, so you don't necessarily know you have an experience because
Yes, I
it's
do.
possible because the laws of logic are made up, the laws of identity are made up. For all you know, A could equal B, and that means
No,
your
no, no.
experience could equal not your experience.
So the laws of logic describe reality. Reality isn't made up. Reality is reality. That's a fact. And then we make up the laws of logic A equals A to describe that fact. Reality can't not be reality. So A can't not be A. But that law of identity, that's the thing we made up to describe reality. The law
Yeah,
of
but
logic.
I'm not talking about
What?
I'm not talking about the formality of it. I'm talking about the thing itself. So I'm saying, the actual thing, it must ontologically be the case, right? The laws of logic must hold invariantly. And I wondered how would you ground that invariance?
Reality is reality, and then we make the law of logic describe that fact. That's the invariance. Reality can't not be reality.
Well, I'm not arguing that reality isn't reality, but really what I'm saying is that how do you know that the laws of logic are not variant?
Well, there can be variants like paraconsistent logic, but again, the fact that reality is reality and we make logic to describe that fact is why logic isn't variant, because it's describing the way reality is. It's not like you can describe the way reality isn't using logic, because that would, again, reality would be not reality. So the reason logic is invariant in the way you put it is because it describes reality, and reality isn't not reality. It doesn't change to not reality.
I mean, wouldn't you agree though that, how would I put it, that like the universe is constantly changing, right? But obviously the laws of logic don't change, right? Do you know what I mean? So I just wonder, how do you ground those kind of ethereal, seemingly laws that just don't change? How are you grounding things like that?
Because reality is reality. That's how you ground them. There are certain laws that change, like gravity was repulsive at one time, and there are certain laws that don't change, like reality is reality. That one's not going to change.
So how do you determine whether or not to accept a claim? So how do you determine that a claim is worthy of a...
Whether or not the evidence is proportional to the claim.
And what is that?
Evidence is something that indicates that it corresponds to reality.
And how do you determine what...
You use a methodology to differentiate imagination from reality.
But wait, you said all you know is that you have an experience. So how did you differentiate reality from...
All you know with absolute certainty is that you have an experience, but then you can go beyond that and use things without absolute certainty, with inductive reasoning, and that works fine.
So do you know that there is a reality and that your experience is not imagination?
Your experience can't be imagination. That's not a thing. Because again, you can't have an experience and not be real. That's not a thing. But
hold on.
Go ahead.
Real quick. But when you say that your experience cannot be imagination, that's anti-solipsistic, which that goes against your epistemology. Yeah, your epistemic solipsism, right?
No. So when I say your experience can't be your experience can't be imaginary, what that means is that your experience can't be something you made up in your mind that you don't exist.
Or illusory, right?
Right. So to have an illusion that you exist without existing is a hard thing to do.
Okay, TJump. So yeah. So this segues into... Oh, thank you, Faye. Sorry. That segued nice into the question that I had. So how do you address the issue of, science says that the way that we're able to have perceptions is due to like our brain. So if you having your experience comes down to your neurology, what if someone were to just say, it could, like, what if they say that, well, what if your neurology's messed up and that's giving you a false, you're not really having an experience, you just think you are. How would you address that?
So if you think you're having an experience, that's an experience.
Right.
No. Like,
you're
yes.
saying a distorted experience. How would you know it's like accurate or something? Right?
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but to me, it's like it's an argument that undercuts it. It cuts its own self.
Does reality equal experience?
No. Your experience is a part of reality. Reality isn't a part of your experience necessarily.
That's anti-solipsism. That sounds anti-solipsism.
I have a good question.
It's like saying all roses are flowers, not all flowers are roses.
I have a good question, TJump. Is there a way to break out of hard solipsism, like philosophically or?
Yes, it's called fallibilism.
Fallibilism?
Yes.
What is that?
Not something I invented, so I would suggest you just Google it. It's complicated philosophy stuff.
Okay. Yeah, because TJump, when you said that if you think you're having an experience, but maybe it's false, you have to be existing but all of that relies on cognition and laws of logic.
Again, the laws of logic are descriptive. They don't exist. They've never existed. They just describe what exists.
But what I'm saying is you just made an argument to sort of say how it wouldn't make sense to say that if someone questions their own neurology and they come to the conclusion that if my neurology is messed up, then maybe I'm not really having an experience. Your reply was, well, to even have that thought, it would indicate that you exist. But my response to that is you just made a logical deduction right there.
Yes.
And if your neurology is messed up, you can't rely on these deductions that you're making.
No, because the truth isn't contingent on the argument. For example, if I say this is a cup, I mean the cup's existence is not contingent on this English sentence. This is a cup. Like the cup exists regardless of whether or not the English sentence exists. So even though you need to presuppose English to form the sentence, this is a cup, the cup can exist without presupposing English. The same thing applies to logic. So even though I'm forming an argument like I exist or this is a deductive argument or whatever, that is true regardless of the logic. You don't need the logic for that to be true because the logic is again just describing the fact that it's true. So you can get rid of the logic completely, it's still going to be true. So just like if I say this is a cup doesn't require English, a logical argument doesn't require logic. The logic just describes the fact it's true. Just like the English describes the fact the cup exists.
Right. We covered this already. Just a quick follow-up.
It's my thing, though. I don't think
if fallibilism can break us out of solipsism, then would you still call yourself a solipsist? TJump.
So again, different kinds of solipsism. Epistemic solipsism is that knowledge starts with "I think, therefore I am." That's still going to be true, like in all grounds of knowledge. You can still there's other ways to get knowledge beyond that, but it'd still be epistemic solipsism because you start with that. So
I think this
would break
is really
us out of
important
ontological solipsism.
This is really important because they claim that only God can break us out of a solipsistic worldview.
Yeah, God doesn't work
but if there's
at all.
If there's something else, then I don't know.
Yeah, fallibilism is the position that you can have knowledge without absolute certainty. That's what fallibilism is.
Are you certain of that?
Yes.
The question?
It's how I define the word. It's what I mean by the word. So.
No, but I mean, you're saying that you're certain you can have knowledge without being certain.
No, I'm certain the position of fallibilism is the position that you can have knowledge without being absolutely certain.
What is your definition of fallibilism again? Did you even give a definition?
Fallibilism is the position that you can have knowledge without absolute certainty.
And I said, are you certain? And you said, yeah.
Yes, that's what the definition of the term is. I'm certain that is the definition of the term because it's what I mean by the term.
So you hold to infallible, you're infallible and fallible, I guess.
So fallibilism is the position that you can have knowledge without absolute certainty, but it doesn't mean you can't have knowledge with absolute certainty. So you can have knowledge with absolute certainty and you can have knowledge without absolute certainty. There can both be knowledge.
I mean, what do you know for certain apart from solipsism?
Nothing, I would say.
Well, apart from nothing and hold on, are you certain that it's nothing?
That's reflective. It's a circular description, so that would be the same thing. It's saying I am certain.
Is that absolutely true?
Again, it's reflective. It's saying the same thing. It's like saying a bachelor's non-married man.
Could you be wrong about it?
Again, you're asking the same thing again. This is it's circular.
Well, how do you know? How do you know I'm asking the same thing? Are you appealing to your memories? And how do you know your memories about your memories are valid?
That's inductive. I don't have absolute certainty about that.
No, but you don't know that, right? Because you have no certainty, so you can't actually know what you're saying. You know,
Right.
is what
I
you're
don't.
saying.
I don't have absolute certainty about meanings of languages and how you're using them. I do have absolute certainty that I exist, though. Those are two different things.
Well, I mean, how do you know that?
Because I experience it.
I mean, but you come back to it every time. It's worse than kind of a Catholic, right? It's just like it just is. That's the, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
But go on, sorry.
It can't.
So his answer is, I'm having an experience, but if his neurology is messed up, then he shouldn't necessarily, we shouldn't logically deduce that he is actually having an experience, because experience, which is perception, comes from neurology. If your neurology is so why are you so sure that your neurology is correct?
Again, so if my neurology was incorrect, assume my neurology is the most incorrect it could possibly ever be, and I have an experience, like how could my neurology produce a false experience of me having an experience? Like, how is that a thing?
Well, I mean, just because you and me might not be able to answer that question doesn't mean that you're actually having an experience.
It
Yes,
doesn't
it does.
matter the neurology, you're still experiencing something, which is
Exactly.
a brute fact.
Exactly.
No.
Right? Do you know what a brute fact is, Face?
You just said you're having an experience, but the point that I'm asking is, you can only have an experience if your neurology is reliable.
Well, one thing
So
is
you
that
have
that's
to,
not true. So you can have
Sorry, what?
experience. You can have
Why
experience
would you
without
think that?
neurology. Like there's
Let
idealism.
TJump talk.
So idealism has experience in its theory, and there's no neurology. It's just consciousness is everything. And there's dualism where you have consciousness and materialism, and there's a combination of both, and you can have experience in that. So experience doesn't require neurology, but if we assume materialism is true, then our experience does require neurology. Now, the problem is that there's no possible combination of a neurological state that can give you a false experience. There's no such thing. Like, it can give you a delusion, but that's still going to be an experience. You can't have an experience and not exist. They literally mean that it's a logical contradiction. A married bachelor.
Okay, but so you're making an argument to say that a faulty neurology can't give you a false experience. That's an argument you're making, which you're using your cognition to make.
So again, the argument is just descriptive. It just describes this. Like if I say, this is a cup, I don't need to presuppose English to say this is a cup. The cup doesn't exist because of English. So the argument I'm making isn't what makes this true. It's just describing the fact it's true. So your neurology can't make you have an experience while you don't exist at the same time. You can't not exist and have an experience.
Well, how do you know that the cup is true? How do you know it exists?
I don't. That's just an assertion, part of the argument.
Okay, but TJump, I think we're talking about two different things. A, the experience, and then B, you making a whole separate argument saying that it's not possible to have a false experience. So there's two different things going on here. And the thing about making an argument that you can't have a false experience, what I'm saying is you're using your cognition to make that argument. So I think we could just throw that argument away. So now all you're left to...
So the argument is irrelevant. The argument is just a description of the fact. It's saying I exist. And then I use the argument to describe that. So the argument is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Like, it's not true because of the argument. The argument doesn't make a difference to this at all.
Well, I think what you just said applies more to the first part where you're just saying I have an experience.
Well, the second part is, again, just definitionally the same as the first part. Like, if I have an experience, I can't not exist and have an experience. Is, again, just saying a bachelor is an unmarried man. It's a different way to phrase the exact same thing.
Whether the experience is true or false is besides the point.
Correct.
So you're saying if you're having an experience, which you're saying is a brute fact, you're saying that you can't have a false experience? Can you please say that again?
Yeah, you can't not exist and have an experience. That would be like a false experience.
You can't not, okay, by definitions is how you're saying, coming to that conclusion?
That word, that phrase means the exact same thing as I exist. So it's like if I said, I don't exist and have an experience, that's, again, the contradiction. That phrasing of the words doesn't work. So if I exist or I have an experience, to have an experience means you exist. If you exist, doesn't necessarily mean you have experience. But if you have an experience, it means you can't not exist, because Those are the same thing. It's like being a married bachelor. If you have an experience, necessarily you also exist. You can't be a bachelor and also be married.
Okay. So yeah, I might be willing to grant that for the time being. So let's get back to the neurology thing. I'm still unclear, if you will. So how is that not problematic for you, for your brute fact?
Because there's no combination of neurology that can make that brute fact not a brute fact. There's not like a combination of neurology that can be like, here is an experience and you don't exist at the same time. Neurology isn't magic.
Well, what's the last part? Neurology isn't what?
Magic. Neurology isn't magic. It can't do logical contradiction. It can't create a square circle.
But that's why, again, I think the argument undercuts it. Like the argument you just made, I don't think you can have confidence in that argument, because if one's neurology was messed up, like you just had to use your neurology just now.
So again, let me try this way. Neurology can give you a delusion. Neurology cannot give you a square circle. It is impossible. Can't do it.
I just don't okay, so what you just said, just that very sentence came from your neurology, which if your neurology was messed up,
couldn't give you a square circle, so it's still going to be right. So again, the laws of logic are still going to be true, even no matter how screwed up your neurology is. It can't give you a false law of logic.
But no, you said they were made up, I thought.
Yeah, so again, it's a descriptive thing, so I'm trying to use your language here.
That's kind of like, okay, can you say it again? No matter how messed up your okay, but again, that's coming from you, who's deducing that.
Right, so it doesn't matter how messed up my neurology is, it'll never get that wrong.
How do you know that?
Because I exist. It means the same thing as the I exist thing.
I don't think he can know he exists if his neurology's messed up. I just don't think so.
Again,
I just don't think he can
have an experience.
We're talking about the brute fact of existence or experience that is happening, not whether it's true or not. Right? We're talking about brute facts versus institutional facts or something.
Well, okay, so I think we are talking if it's true or not.
So, well, there's two different parts here. One is like I can have an experience and not know it. Like I could be crazy and not know I have an experience, but the fact I have an experience can't be false. So if you say, is it possible to have an experience and not know you have an experience? Sure, that is possible.
Is it my connection or his?
What did you? So what I said was, it's possible to have an experience and not know you have an experience, but that doesn't.
Okay,
you still exist. You still necessarily exist.
Okay, yeah, I could agree with that, but I'm just, so you're a materialist, I guess, or a naturalist. So you would think that all things come down to neurology, and then, but you're saying, but so again, it's like a vicious circle. It's like,
no,
you're accepting that you're having a perception of your experience. That's a perception.
Perception and experience are the same thing. It's just I have experience.
Okay, but perceptions come from the brain, I guess, right?
Yes.
Okay,
maybe rephrasing cogito ergo sum could help, right? While you're having an experience, you cannot doubt that you are having that experience or something like that.
Well, you can actually, but that's again not a different thing.
However, it's better phrased, you know.
Well, again, so
yes, the intuition there, I agree with you. But if we're just thinking about it logically, though, if you're saying perception equals experience, but then you're going to say that perception stems from brain activity, then that means you're ultimately relying on brain activity. But so now my issue is, let's prove that the brain activity is reliable.
Again, the brain activity can't not be reliable. It is necessarily the case that no matter what the brain activity is, I can't have an experience and it be false. So it can't be wrong in that case. It can't ever be wrong. There is no possible combination that can ever be wrong in that case.
All you're arguing for is really solipsism, right? You're just saying, look, I exist and I know that. That's all you're really arguing for.
Well, yeah, he's saying that somehow if our neurology is wrong, then solipsism can be false. I mean, that's not the case. Like, we know solipsism is true.
Oh, no. No, we grant you solipsism, but I'm just saying, but you're not making any bolder claims than that, right?
Yeah, essentially. I'm saying that
Just don't. Okay.
the neurology doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It
go ahead.
can't make solipsism false. So we know it's still going to be true, even if we're just neurology.
How could neurology not matter if that's the basis for perception?
Because neurology can't do anything. It's not like it's not a magic god thing that can make you believe in a round square. Neurology can't make wrong laws of logic. Neurology can't make round squares. No matter how distorted your neurology is, you will never be able to imagine a round square because it's a contradiction in reality. And because your brain is in reality, it's limited to the things that describe reality.
And everything that you just said right now is making sense to you based on
No. So it's not making sense to me. It's literally descriptions of reality. So making sense to me is irrelevant. The making sense to me, again, cannot not conform to reality. My neurology cannot make a round square. It cannot deviate from reality because it's a part of reality. If you're saying that neurology can exist and make reality not reality, no, it can't.
It's observer independent, right? Would you say?
Reality? Yes.
There you go.
I'm maybe I'm not getting it, but these are conclusions that you're coming to.
Yes, they're based on neurology, and neurology cannot be wrong about these things.
According to your neurology.
No. They can't make reality not be reality. So it's not about neurology here. Neurology can't make reality not be reality. Regardless of how diluted you want the neurology to be, you can make it as crazy as you want. No combination of neurology can ever make reality not reality. So it can't ever get you to imagine a round square. And it has nothing to do with my neurology. It has nothing to do with my belief system. This is just, again, a brute fact. Cannot do that.
Well, a neurology can't make a round square. That's a sentence that makes sense to you that you just uttered.
Again, the descriptive sentence that makes sense to me is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if it makes sense to me. What matters is, does it describe reality? And the answer
What
is
if
yes.
you take color blindness? That sense is busted without anyone telling you that it's busted. If you're seeing, say you can't see green, whatever you're seeing, whatever color you're seeing is still an experience.
Yes.
Even though that color is actually something else in reality.
Right. So your neurology can give you beliefs that are like incorrect, but it cannot give you beliefs that are reality isn't reality. It can't do that.
Yeah.
It cannot make reality not reality. There are certain things neurology can do. It can get things wrong. It can give you fallacies, biases, illusions, delusions, hallucinations, etc. It can't make reality not reality. You guys keep saying, neurology is wrong, therefore it can make reality not reality. Neurology does not have that power. It cannot do that.
Okay, TJump, thank you for your replies. I'm going to think about these things you're saying, and maybe I'll get back to you.
Sure, thanks. Anybody else have any questions? Or
Yeah, I do. So, how do you disprove epistemic solipsism?
Epistemic solipsism is the belief that knowledge begins at I think, therefore am. To disprove it, you would just have to have a different grounds of knowledge. Like there are other epistemologies.
And would that be a defeater, or it's just more like it's a cohabitation?
Well, epistemologies aren't saying this is true. Epistemologies are just saying this is where we start to ground knowledge. So you can have lots of different epistemologies and ground knowledge in lots of different places. It's not a statement about reality. It's a statement about how you ground knowledge. So there wouldn't be true or false in that case. Like saying this method is true. It's like it's a method. You can use a bunch of different methods.
Vesper, thank you too.
Hey, TJump, can I ask you a question?
Sure, go for it.
All right. So
No
I've seen you on YouTube a lot, and I'm curious. I wouldn't accuse anyone in the current chat of this, but I've seen you debate some people who use a lot of tactics and just kind of continue to talk, don't actually have a dialogue or back and forth. What is the benefit to dialoguing with these people who aren't actually willing to have a dialogue?
Well, there's a number of benefits. One is that it's fun. Like talking with Darth Dawkins is just hilarious. I absolutely love it. I want to talk with Darth Dawkins all the time because he's great. But it's also a good exercise in your debate skills, like trying to learn how to engage with that kind of an opponent and have a slightly productive conversation is a very difficult challenge, and it is a fun challenge. So there's lots of different benefits. That also money is nice. I like getting money. So there's lots of different benefits.
Okay, thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, I wanted to know, TJump, if you could push for that Steve McRae debate someday, because I'd love to see it.
Oh yeah, we were going to do the debate, a modern day debate, and it got canceled for sure. I think he was gonna set it up at some point, but I think Steve said he wanted to do it live or something. I don't remember.
Yeah, but I think you'll need to push for it, man, because I asked Steve and James, and it seems like it's delayed a lot.
Yeah.
I'm just excited about it.
Yeah, for sure.
TJump, like, do you agree that the person making the claim has the burden of proof?
Yes.
Okay, can you meet that burden? Seeing as you're making the claim that that person has the burden of proof, can you meet that burden?
Inductively, yes.
Could you do it now?
Yes, we could say that if you take a bunch of sets of claims, one's made by people and one's not made by people, and you can say, I make a claim that there is a rabbit in the box. In order to say that that is a reasonable conclusion, you would have to provide evidence, because it could be false. And so that's why the person who makes the claim holds the burden of proof.
Okay, but then did you use your reasoning in that process?
Yes. You don't need that's not an absolute certainty thing. You don't need absolute certainty for that one. That's an inductive belief.
Are you sure?
Yes.
You're sure you don't need to be sure?
Yep. Definitional, circular reasoning, same thing.
They have this thing where autonomous reasoning is like the most evil, vile thing ever.
Yeah, it's not. So there's like Agrippa's trilemma is that you can ground all reasoning in one of three ways: brute fact, circular reasoning, and infinite regress. Those are their three options. It's all perfectly fine to do that. Foundationalism is usually the one philosophers go to saying that it's totally fine to do that, not a problem.
Would someone who doesn't know anything know that they don't know anything?
You're saying your reasoning is not valid unless it comes from God, right, Face?
Well, I'm saying that everyone's reasoning is a gift from the Most High. Like all of you guys.
No, Face. It's like we don't know things that we don't yet know. Like we didn't know certain planets existed before we found that out.
Sure.
So we can't say for any certainty what we don't know. Although I think we can say with reasonable certainty that there are things we don't know.
Well, we can't say we don't know, because to know something, it literally has to be an idea in your head. And so if you don't have the idea in your head, then by definition, you don't know it.
How do you know that?
Because it's definitional.
Oh, okay. So just like Christ is the King of Kings, it's definitional.
That's a synthetic proposition, so that it would not be definitional. Definitionals are analytic propositions.
So you're just saying, okay, like, so is. How about that?
I have no idea what you mean.
Well,
so do you know the difference between synthetic and analytic propositions? Like, analytic propositions are things true by definition. Synthetic propositions are things true about like an external reality. Those are two different classes of things. One is purely language that we make up, and one is about
how are you drawing a line between like an external reality and a non-external reality?
Oh, well, this isn't about, those are just examples. So the synthetic analytic is different kinds of propositions, things that are true by definition, like languages that we make up, and propositions that aren't true by definition, like there is an apple over there. That's just an example. Whether or not there is an external reality doesn't matter to the example.
Mm. So you're just saying basically things are what they are, right? Basically, but then again, how do you know that the laws of logic are invariant? You don't.
Again, they're descriptive in languages.
So if something was to change from A to B, then but yeah, just saying they're descriptive. What is that even saying? You're telling me that there is no prescriptive nature to reality, right? Nothing has to operate in a particular way.
There's not like any laws that prescribe the way reality operates. Reality just is reality, and then we use the laws of logic to describe that. So
Are you listening, Face, or are we just going to keep going in circles forever?
Probably.
Well, no, but you keep on saying like you're saying reality is reality, right?
Yes.
Okay, but that necessitates the law of logic, right?
No.
Which you're saying
The law of logic comes after that.
is just
law of logic comes after.
Well, that's what you're saying. That's what you're saying. But I mean, how do you? Is there like an argument for that?
Yes, that's just the definition of logic. Logic is a formal language. Classical logic, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, very first sentence.
So I'm not on about the classification of it. I'm on about like the ontological state of affairs, the ontological nature of those laws.
Logic again was invented by humans. It's a language like English. So the reason we think that logic came second is the same reason we think English came second, is because it was made up by people.
No, but see, you're on about like codification. I'm saying that things were what they were, or are what they are, were what they were before man ever codified those laws, right?
Yeah, that's reality is reality.
Well, that's one of the laws, but I'm just saying you're basically asserting that is just the state of affairs and there was no prescription involved. And I'm just saying, how do you know that?
Because reality can't not be reality. It's not like reality was not reality before the law of logic was invented.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. See, that's what you're misunderstanding. I'm not saying reality has to be not reality. I'm not countering the conclusion. I'm saying that how do you know that, in other words?
Because reality can't not be reality. That's how we know it.
But like, look, could the laws of logic be variant? That's possible, right? In your worldview, you can't ground a universal, right?
No, reality is always going to be reality. That's a universal.
But how do you know that universals can be grounded in a solipsistic world where you don't know anything outside of your mind exists?
Again, because it's just a description of reality.
Have no choice.
The universals are getting descriptions. They're not a thing that exists like independently. A universal is just a description that always applies. But reality is a universal description.
How do you know that universal description always applies in a solipsistic world where for all you know that nothing exists outside of your mind?
Because even if my mind is the only thing that exists, reality is still reality. It can't not be reality.
But would it be universal? Let's say if reality stopped when you died, would it be universal?
Yeah, if reality stopped, if there was nothingness after I died, reality would still be reality.
Okay, okay, I get where you're coming from. You're saying nothingness equals nothingness, therefore, reality is reality.
If there was nothingness,
if there was
nothingness, then the nothingness would be reality. That would be what reality is just nothingness.
Yeah. I'm with you. Would someone who doesn't know anything know that they don't know anything?
Maybe, maybe not. I have no idea.
Well,
surely
by definition,
there are examples of brains that do not know anything. Like we know that C. elegans has a neurological structure. It has a brain that has no knowledge. So it doesn't know anything. Probably doesn't know it knows anything.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So would someone, I suppose I'm asserting seemingly, right, that someone who doesn't know anything couldn't know that they know nothing, right? They just couldn't.
I have no idea. It's possible they could. I don't know.
I mean, how is it possible? I don't get it. How could they? If they can't know anything, how can they know?
Well, right. So they could know that one fact, and that would be all they know, and that would be fine.
Well, then, but that would contradict that one fact. Because if they,
Again, so the definition, if by definition they know absolutely nothing, then yeah, they wouldn't be able to know that. But you can know that one fact and then know nothing else. That's also logically possible. Both of those are logically possible.
No. Yeah, I'm just saying, would someone who knows nothing at all know that they know nothing?
By that definition, no. But it is possible to know that one thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's going a bit further. So all I'm saying is, look, since you agree that someone who knows nothing wouldn't know that they know nothing, how do you know that you're not one of those people, since they wouldn't know?
Because I know I exist, so I'm not one of those people.
No, but you agree that they wouldn't know that they know nothing. And now you're sort of backtracking and you're saying, well, I know. Yeah, but you already admit they wouldn't know that they know nothing.
Yeah, but if they know something, then they know they don't know. They know something. So
well,
as long as they know one thing, anything, then they necessarily can't be someone who knows nothing.
But then you're just going to lean on solipsism, right? You're going to say, I know solipsism is
dude.
Yeah, I mean that's we can prove for a fact that I am not one of those people because I know that I exist. I have experience.
Well, when you say we can prove that is anti-solipsistic.
Yeah, so,
I mean, you
so
can
that's
try and
I
prove it
can prove
yourself.
that to myself. So again, you just keep going back to the solipsism thing. The solipsism thing is solved. Like we know that your entire premise is false. We have knowledge without God, no problem. You keep coming back to that like a number of
Could
times.
you explain the problem of universals, TJump, perhaps? That might help. That might help things. I don't know.
I don't think that would help things.
The problem with universals because he's resting his whole worldview off of a universal.
I don't think that's a good way to go. I think he's resting his whole worldview off of presupposition, and that presupposition is just ridiculous. Like you can presuppose anything you want; it doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, he's presupposing that he has an ultimate universal thing that explains everything, right?
Yeah, you can just presuppose a different one, and you get the exact same result. It's just
Yeah, we could posit. We could posit the pink unicorn, right? The invisible pink unicorn,
Yeah.
and that would justify all knowledge.
Yes, it would justify it equally as well as a god. Yes.
Well, he's claiming to have logical proof of this, right? It was all facts are contingent upon this one primary.
But a lot of the
universe.
questions he's putting to TJump, he could put to himself, and he'd have to have the same answers. Like, how does he know his sense perceptions are correct to even know what that ultimate truth is?
Well, I think he'd say that, well, God gave him reliable cognitive faculties or something like that.
Yeah, but he doesn't know that any better than you do.
Right. Yeah. So it's just, again, just a presupposition. So my view is more logical than his for sure.
I mean, they have something transcendental and universal. Like they're appealing to that, right? And that all facts lead back to that somehow. But if you could explain like the problem of universals, that might help us out here.
No, that's a really hard problem. Go read J.P. Moreland's book on universals.
I don't understand it myself yet. Quite yet.
Kind of like the problem of the one and the many. It's a tough problem. It's one of the unsolved problems in philosophy.
Okay.
What about morals, TJump? Like, would you say, is it, wrong to say eat a baby's, brains for fun? Is that wrong?
I believe in objective morality. I'm a moral realist like most philosophers. Like I think 50.
Are you a monist or dualist or what?
No, I'm a physicalist, so I'm a monist, not a dualist.
Okay.
But yeah, most philosophers, most atheist philosophers believe in moral realism, objective morality. Like 54% of philosophers believe in moral realism and only 15% are theists. So you can have morality, objective morality without a god, no problem.
I always get Darth down to, it comes down to dualism versus monism. These concrete one and abstract particulars or
that was essentially his argument against me, which was completely irrelevant because my entire intro had nothing to do with my intro. Like he didn't even address my intro. Like, okay.
Right. I mean, we get to an impasse, and then he just like says, "Oh, that's incoherent." Way, or ban somebody or mutes them.
Yep. Or rages. He rage quits.
Physicalism. Okay.
Is it fair to say that once you kind of hold to epistemic solipsism, everything from there out, all science, everything is faith-based. Your entire world is faith-based because you don't know that the universe exists outside of your mind, right?
No, because again, fallibilism is the position you can have knowledge without absolute certainty. So it's based on a probabilistic ground of knowledge. Faith would be the way I define faith is a belief without justification.
Well, the thing is, though, I mean, how would I put this? So, like any kind of percentage that you want to put on something, you can't ground that. So, if you said, like, I'm 50% certain, and I said, okay, are you 100% certain that you're 50% certain? You'd have to say no. And I can get you down to 0%.
No,
and I can still have
that's false.
That's
been addressed in philosophy for a long time. Again, that's purely just definitional. There's not an issue there at all.
So I'm just reading here.
Let's try. I mean, the TJump. Let's just say you're 50% certain that ice cream is better than chocolate.
Sure.
And I say, okay, you're 100% sure that ice cream is better. You're 100% sure that you're 50% sure. What would you say?
I'm 100% sure that I'm 50% sure.
Yeah.
So I'm reading about physicalism. It says it's a form of ontological monism, a quote, one substance view of the nature of reality as opposed to a two substance dualism or many substance pluralism view.
Yes. So physicalism is the idea that matter or energy is the
And
one
how does it
thing.
deal with particulars? Are they abstract like a
No, those are two separate
monist?
things. So there's physicalism is that there is one substance, and the substance is material, but there could be lots of different individual particular things that are all of the same substance.
So are the individual particular things viewed in an abstract way? Like they're not actually separate, it's all one, or
No, they all have the same nature, which is of the particular substance. It's not abstract. It's like they have a particular nature, which is the nature of energy or whatever, and that nature is described by a set of laws, and that set of laws.
they all share a same property or something.
Yeah, they all share the same nature. They're made of the same stuff.
Okay. Interesting.
What was the question I asked? I know you was wrestling with it just a little bit. It was kind of a random question.
Which one?
Just reading about physicalism here.
Yeah. I threw one of those kind of, crazy questions at you.
I don't remember what question was.
Do you remember, TJump?
I do not remember. I do not remember which question. You threw a lot of questions out at me.
Yeah. He keeps going back to solipsism, basically.
Yeah, well, that's all in your mind, that solipsism.
I think the last one you said was about morality. That's the last one I remember.
I think I moved on. to a different one. It was pretty good because you went, it was like, I had you for a second there. But it's fine. It doesn't, I suppose,
Are you 100% certain that you're 50%?
Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah, I asked the ice cream one. You said, are you 100% certain that you like chocolate 50% more than vanilla? And I said, I responded, yes, I am 100% certain. Yeah, I am 100% certain that I like chocolate 50% more than vanilla. I am 100% certain of that.
So no, I'm saying if it's that you're 50% certain of something, and you're 100% certain that you're 50%, really, because you're holding to probabilistic, you can't grant the 100%.
I can totally grant that. So I can grant I have 100% certainty that I believe chocolate is 50% better than vanilla.
How do you ground the universal then? The 100%.
Because it's my belief. I have a belief that chocolate is 50% better than vanilla. I can be 100% certain that that is a description of my belief.
But it's just a belief, though, right? I mean,
yes. So again, the definition thing. If I'm describing,
is it a sort of subjective objectivity or something like that?
No, it's just language.
Subjectively true.
It's just language. If I use words to mean something, I can be 100% certain that I use those words to mean that one thing that I use them to mean, because that's how beliefs work.
How do you know that?
Because that's how language works. That's how language is.
It just is because it is, kind of thing.
Language is you create sounds to represent ideas. That's what language is. So if you have a sound that represents an idea, then you can be 100% certain that you made that sound to represent that idea.
Okay, but what provides intelligibility for you to say that?
Go back to solipsism. I can just ground it off of I exist, and I'm making words to describe that.
I mean, is God's just is what he is? Faith just exists.
Well, but he's
self-contained.
He's self-contained. Yeah, he's a little bit different to kind of just a solipsist saying I exist.
I mean, you have to have a divine revelation or natural revelation to know that he exists.
I mean, it's I'm a little bit kind of I'm not sure on this one because it seems like many people seem to genuinely not know, but then it seems the truth has come into the world, and people prefer darkness rather than light. So I'm not really sure exactly where people sit on the scale of knowing and not knowing and everything. I'm not really sure.
I think he's saying that in order for you to know God is self-contained, God would have to tell you that he's self-contained. Like through logic or something. Like it has to come to you in the form of your brain.
Right. It's like sign the agreement here, this terms of use, and then it will show you that God exists afterward. Sign on the dotted line here. Don't read the fine print.
Yeah, so essentially you
an
just have
ultimacy of all things.
You'd
It would have to be, wouldn't it? An ultimacy of all things would have to be somewhat self-contained.
I don't think so. I don't even know what that means to say self-contained in that context. But you have to believe that what God tells you is correct. You have to believe that the beliefs that God gives you are true when not false, because God could just be an evil demon and give you false beliefs. And so you wouldn't actually know God is not self-contained, and he made you think he was.
Well, how do you know that? And also, if that's the epistemology you hold to, in some respect, if that's possible, then couldn't you be being given false beliefs yourself?
Yes, I could be given false beliefs, but I can't be given false beliefs that I exist. That's the one thing that can't be a false belief. God,
No.
Not even
Yeah,
God.
so
not even God could make me believe I exist and not exist. God can't do that.
So I mean, so all you hold to is just solipsism is the the epistemic imperative, I guess, is what you're saying. No, it's not even that, is it? It's basically because you're saying that's all you know. There's nothing you know beyond that. So it's just
No. So that's the
literally,
ground.
it's
That's
just
the
like the
first thing. That's the
epistemic
first thing you know. So I'm not saying that's the only thing we know. That's the only thing we know with absolute certainty. But we know lots of other things too, just with not absolute certainty. It's called fallibilism.
What do you call it? Like, are you self-contained? Or would you say that
I
you're
have no
dependent
idea
on?
what that means. I don't know what self-contained means.
Right?
I mean,
that the I exists.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I suppose, do you depend on other things like do you eat food, that kind of stuff?
I'm still not like, as far as I know, yeah, I'm a biological organism that requires nutrients and metabolism.
Okay, yeah, but that's a belief, though, right? You're not saying that's not necessarily the case.
So yeah, it's not necessarily the case. You're right. I could just be deluded and believe on that, and actually I'm self-contained or self-sufficient, self-existing.
How do you know that? How do you know you could be deluded?
Because we have examples of delusions.
Well, wait, that's anti-solipsistic, though, right?
No. Solipsism, again, epistemic solipsism is how the first thing we know is that I think, therefore I am. And then we use other methods to know other things, which is called fallibilism in science. So we know lots of other stuff also. We just start with I think, therefore I am.
I mean, how do you get out of solipsism? How do you kind of posit, how do you go from saying, I don't know other minds exist, to then knowing stuff about the other minds? No?
Fallibilism.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just a word to just kind of basically get you out of solipsism when I don't think.
No, because again, fallibilism is the position that you can have knowledge without absolute certainty. So you can have other grounds of knowledge that aren't certain, and they still give you knowledge. Like science is one of the methodologies that can give you knowledge without it being absolutely certain.
It's not just a word; it's describing a philosophical view of things.
Yep.
But it goes against solipsism, which is kind of like the foundation of the atheist worldview, right?
But solipsism is dependent on a certain view of knowledge. So if you don't agree to that view of knowledge, then you can subscribe to fallibilism, and you're not subject to the criticism of solipsism because it's a different conception of knowledge.
But when I push on you.
There's different kinds of solipsism. So wait.
You'll drop fallibilism and drop right back to solipsism.
No.
And then
let
the gas, then you're back on fallibilism.
Wait, there's multiple kinds of solipsism. There's an ontological solipsism or philosophical solipsism, which is the position that only your mind exists. That's it. No one believes that. As far as I know, no atheist has ever believed that in hundreds of years. There is an epistemic solipsism. Epistemic solipsism is the first thing we know with absolute certainty.
I'm aware. But how do you know that you're not an ontological solipsist?
Because it's not my belief system. I can be 100% certain I'm not an ontological solipsist. Or, I mean, I don't believe I am.
You don't believe you are, but you don't know that.
Yeah, I could be the only brain that exists. That's a possibility. I can't be certain that I'm not ontologically the only thing that exists, but I can have a probabilistic belief that I'm not.
So, but that's the thing. But once you grant that, now everything in your worldview is faith-based. Everything, like the dog has a waggy tail. That's faith-based. That could be all in your imagination. You don't.
No. So there's probabilistic beliefs. Like if I flip a coin and you don't see the coin, you can say that it's 50% heads and 50% tails. That is a knowledge-based belief. You don't have 100% certainty it's one way or the other. You have a percent certainty, a level of percentage confidence. Science gives us a level of percentage confidence of things like other people existing in the external world.
Where did you get this from? Where did you hear this?
Where did I hear what?
Yeah, that what you just said about the coin and the is this solipsistic knowledge, or is this some kind of divine
again,
revelation?
we can get to science starting with solipsism. So I think, therefore I am. I exist. Reality is reality. Law of identity. There's one reality. Math. There is some difference between my imagination and my experience. Like when I imagine a unicorn, I don't see a unicorn. All of this is stuff I can experience on my own. And then we can say that we need some way to differentiate the imaginary things from the real things. Go through a lot of different methodologies, science. And so we can get all of that just starting with I think, therefore I am, to science. Then we can say science gives us a probabilistic way to differentiate imaginary from real things.
Am I right? I might mess up the name. Is it Bertrand Russell that I think isn't he an atheist that refuted I think, therefore I am? Is that right?
Yes, but he didn't refute I think, therefore I am. He refuted Descartes' dualism. So Descartes used I think, therefore I am to argue for substance dualism. He said that thinking is a thing in and of itself. It can't be a product of something else. And Bertrand Russell said, no, that's false. The thinking could be dualistic, or it could be idealistic, or it could be materialistic. So Bertrand Russell refuted Descartes' dualism. He refuted that I think, therefore I am is an argument for dualism. He did not refute I think, therefore I am, just the fact that argues for dualism.
Well, I mean, I don't know those intricacies, but unless you can, show me where I'm making a mistake here, because I seem to believe that, if begging the question is when you assume your conclusion is assumed in your premise. So when you say I think, therefore I am, if the conclusion is I am, but you was assumed in the very first word I, you'd have to just say there's thinking going on, right? To not beg the question.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. You're totally right about that. That's totally right. The problem is the argument isn't why it's true. So remember, like if I said, this is a cup, I need to presuppose English to say the English sentence, this is a cup. But the cup exists regardless of the English sentence. The English sentence is just describing the fact the cup exists. Arguments work the same way. You need to presuppose logic to form an argument. Like I think, therefore I am. That's an argument. But my existence isn't true because of the argument. You can just forget the argument. You can get rid of the argument completely and just say I exist. And that's totally fine. So the argument, I think, therefore I am, all it's doing is just describing the fact I exist. You don't need the argument.
Can you please do me a favor? Can you please define I and you please define I. Hey, that's a guy that needs to get muted. That guy needs to get muted. Thank you. Can you please define I and exist?
Well, exist is just things that are real, things that exist in reality. I don't know how else to put it, but it's the real things. I is the thinking. So when I say I mean thinking. Those are synonymous terms.
They're not synonymous, though, are they? Not
No,
really.
just,
I mean,
aren't you making the same argument?
In the way I'm using them, I and thinking are synonymous. So they aren't necessarily synonymous. I'm using them to be synonymous.
Well, you are inferring the I, the self, from the thinking, right? You're kind of there's thinking going on.
Those to mean the exact same thing. The thinking is the I is the thinking. Those are synonyms.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a bunch of atheist friends, and they do the same thing. They say experience is the self, thinking is synonymous with the I, and I'm like, no, you do the thinking. You have an experience, but you can't say they're synonymous. That's like saying, imagine if I just said, experience going to town today. You'd be like, what? No, I'm going to town today to have an experience. You wouldn't. They're not synonymous. You know what I mean?
No. So, because again, the thinking thing is you. That is what it is. So the thinking, the thoughts, the process of thinking, that is what makes you. Is that?
I mean, I would agree with the conclusion, right? But it's just, how do you know that? You seem to
really
use
quick. Sorry, really quick. Can you define no also?
To have a justified true belief, knowledge.
Face, aren't you making the same argument when you say, I know God exists because I
Well, it depends what you mean. I mean, he's necessary, right? The ground of all being would be necessarily necessary, if you really think about it, just for a moment.
Necessarily necessary?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I agree there has to be a ground of reality. That's necessary, but it doesn't need to be a ground, that's for sure.
Damn. So the ground of reality, in order for us to know it, it would have to be revelatory and honest, right? And care about you enough to give you that
No.
that information, right?
No, you don't need any of that.
It's sort of self-grounding the way you claim God to be.
Well, whatever. I mean, I didn't claim this. This is really a claim he made, you know.
I mean, what grounds God exactly?
Well, I mean, that's the thing about when you're self-contained, you don't need someone else to ground you, right?
Okay, isn't reality? Can we then say reality is self-contained?
It depends. Does it include a revelatory being that brings forth contingent, states of affairs?
Nope, it's just eternal, all-powerful nature. That's it. But it is self-contained. It is self-existing. There's nothing else created it. It exists on its own.
It's starting to sound quite religious, TJump.
Yeah, it's called naturalistic pantheism. It's saying that there is an eternal, all-powerful nature with no mind. You get rid of all the mind properties. It's called naturalistic pantheism. And so it's just like theism. This is pantheism. And so it just says that there is a self-contained thing, to use your language, which is just nature. And nature is that self-contained thing, and it exists eternally, and it was uncreated.
It's not mind-dependent, right? Or it's observer-independent.
Well, that's a different thing. That doesn't require observer to
exist.
It's
a brute fact, right?
Yeah, brute fact would be correct.
Okay.
I actually, Darth makes a good point with those brute facts, though. When he says a fact has to, and if you don't have any context, then you really can't call it a fact. So when you posit you're saying it's no fact at all. I do think that seems quite valid, though.
Well, no, a brute fact just means a brute fact just means we don't know. There's no justification for it. Like it's just true. Like God exists would be a brute fact in your worldview.
Well, no, but I mean he's sort of self-contained again, right? So it's not like he's just not some arbitrary kind of unjustified. It's
that's the same thing. That would also be a brute fact by the definition in philosophy. Those would both be brute facts.
I have a little dialogue. I have a little dialogue tree somebody made for Darth, which deals with brute facts.
Okay, TJump.
So I'll post it in the chat.
Yeah, could you post it in my Discord somewhere?
Not in your Discord, I don't think.
There's a link in every one of my videos on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
Okay, TJump. When you make the statement, "I know I exist," can you let's break down the word "know"? Can you tell me what the justification and the truth in that going on there? Please?
It's a description of a fact of reality I experience. I'm just describing the fact that I have this experience thing. Which is a fact of reality.
Okay, but the definition of know, you said, is justified true belief. So if you're saying I know I exist, so what's the justification there?
I experience it.
So the justification is you experience it in the truth part?
Is the fact that I experience it.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, isn't natural and special revelation dependent upon experience?
Can someone mute Fuzz? He's hot.
Can someone explain how natural revelation is supposed to work?
Wait, can you mute?
How we all know God exists, inherently, and we're just denying him. That's the claim that you guys like to make, right?
What's Revelation 1 say? It's pretty epic. You must have heard it.
How do we inherently know that God exists without any interaction or anything?
Well, I think that we would have interaction. I think that they say that thing about they've written it in our hearts or whatever. The Holy Spirit has written it in our hearts. So there was an interaction. God has supposedly written this information in our brain somewhere, and we've suppressed it.
Right, that's part of it. Yeah. We know it in our hearts, or do we look at the world and somehow know it's designed?
The way I've heard them say it is that the idea is, well, you do have a soul, and then it's like a kind of a model. It's saying if God exists, if the God that's claimed exists, is it possible for them to give you certain knowledge in a way that you could be certain of it? Is that a possibility? If that
some kind of soul connection or something?
Yeah, no, zaps it right into your third eye.
I mean, this right here, the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth in their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain to them because God has made it plain. For since the creation of the world, his invisible qualities, eternal power and divine nature has been clearly seen, being understood by what has been made. So people are without excuse, for although they knew him, they neither glorified him as God, neither gave him thanks, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts became darkened. And although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made like, mortal human beings and birds and reptiles. So it seems, there's a sort of a revelation within nature. And then there's obviously...
Nigger.
Whoa, hey. Who are these people?
Idiots.
Yeah, go on.
Because it seems to be going back to something like Platonism, these ideal forms in some kind of metaphysical realm and all this,
Mm-hmm.
sort of Neoplatonism or something.
So TJump.
Cool,
I'm sorry.
No, go on.
Oh, it's okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm done. I'm just rambling.
Okay, thank you. So TJump, when you say I know I exist, that can basically be reworded as I'm having an experience.
Yep.
And you cannot doubt that you're having an experience as you're having it.
Well, no, that you can doubt you're having an experience while you're having it. The problem is that you can't be wrong if you say I have an experience and I exist. So you can doubt you're having an experience while having an experience. It'd be ridiculous, but it is possible. But you can't say you're having an experience and be wrong.
Or it can't be doubted that I am having an experience.
Well, that can be doubted. So you can have an experience and doubt you're having an experience. That's possible. What makes it true is that you can't say you exist. You can't have an experience and believe you exist and be wrong. Those three things can't exist at the same time. That's what makes it important.
Can you doubt doubting?
Yes. Sure.
What does that mean?
Well, you're saying you can doubt your experience or whatever. I'm saying, well, can you doubt that you doubt?
Sure. I mean, it's possible. It's like believing you have an experience and then believing you don't exist at the same time. Like you can have those kinds of odd beliefs.
Okay, so TJump, what's the ultimate point here? You're basically you're saying you can know something without God?
Yes, I think that was like
you can base rationality, right? You can base rationality off of cogito ergo sum.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about when a Christian says that you're not? What about when a Christian grants that you are knowing that you exist, but you can't be knowing it without God?
You'd have to show how that's the case, because my argument doesn't have a God in it anywhere.
Some sort of metaphysical precursor or something.
Yeah, so if my argument says I think therefore I am, reality is reality, and that's sufficient to give me rationality. Since God isn't in any of the premises, and they're saying you have this other premise in there with a God in it, you'd have to show me where that other premise is.
Okay, so you just came up with an argument that shows how you can have rationality and know things without God, right? That's just what you just did right there?
Yes, the argument does not contain a God anywhere.
So a Christian would have to come up with an argument how you couldn't have just come up with that argument without God. That's what a Christian would have to do.
Something like that, yeah.
A presupposition of some sort.
Well, that wouldn't be an argument, because you can presuppose the alternative, like any alternate presupposition, and be equally supported. So that wouldn't work.
Hey Tom, I got a question.
Yeah.
Hey man, so you know how you say natural pantheism could be like an alternative to the God belief?
Yeah, naturalistic pantheism.
Right, naturalistic pantheism.
Yeah, what about it?
Yeah, so my question is, how do you know the natural, like, you know how they say you need special revelation to know God? Like, how would you know natural pantheist, natural pantheism is the
Well, you could just say it has a law of nature that just imparts the information on our brain, just like they say about God. Just say there's a law that is a part of its nature, which gives every brain this piece of information. Make it up just like they do.
Thank you, man.
No problem.
TJump, what would you count as actual, credible, real-world evidence for God?
Any testable prediction. So if you say, I believe God exists, if I pray to a God, a gold brick will appear in front of me, and you pray, and every time it happens, you get a gold brick, that would be evidence of a God.
So why would that dramatic, miraculous, sensational event count as evidence for God?
Well, it's not, it doesn't matter. The event doesn't matter. It's just any testable predictions. It's the same criteria for everything in reality. You need some way to differentiate, is something real or is it imaginary? And the best way to do that is novel testable predictions. It doesn't matter what the predictions are. The gold brick is just a prediction. You could pick a pork chop or spontaneous healings, or like if the Bible said that God, created the world 6,000 years ago, and I did it with a double helix. All genetic information of all living creatures made with a double helix with the ATCG, and I placed all these fossils to make it look like the world was older. Like that would be evidence of a God too. Like if the Bible said all of that 2,000 years ago, that would be evidence of a God. So just any novel testable predictions would work for evidence to show it's real and not imaginary, just like it does for science.
Okay, but it seems to me what you're doing is you're using the God of the gaps argument, because you're going ahead and saying that something that God has presented that science cannot automatically dismiss. So in other words, is the God of the gaps reasoning that you're using a valid way of determining the existence of God?
That's not God of the gaps reasoning. I don't know where you got that. So again, my argument is that you need novel testable predictions. Like if you have a hypothesis, you make novel testable predictions. That's evidence of your hypothesis. That's not a God of the gaps.
Right, but you just said if he was able to make a brick appear out of nowhere,
that was just a particular
and do it
example.
over and over again, that would be
No.
So that's the example you gave.
That's
so
just
that
an
would be a
example.
God of the gaps reasoning.
No.
Right. So would that be a valid way of determining the existence of God?
No, that is not God of the gaps reasoning. That is an example. An example of a testable prediction. Any testable predictions work. So the gold brick is not a God of the gaps thing. God of the gaps is saying, if we see an explanation of an unknown event, here's something we can't explain. Oh, God could explain it, therefore God. That's a God of the gaps. That's not what I said. I said we can make a prediction about something we don't know yet, and then we will just do a test to see if that prediction comes true. And then if it comes true, that's evidence of the hypothesis. A God of the gaps is explaining something we already know and saying, well, I can explain that with a God. So there's a difference.
No, I understand, but the thing is, science cannot know how God is making the bricks appear. And again, that's the example that you brought out.
You don't need
and
to.
that would be a God of the gaps example.
No.
So again, is the God of the gaps
a God of the gaps,
a valid way of determining this existence?
No. So again, a God of the gaps is when you explain something we already know, like, oh, look, I saw the sun come up. I can explain that with God. If we already know that this thing occurred and you can explain that with a God, that isn't evidence of a God. You can explain it with anything you want. That's a God of the gaps. It's not a God of the gaps to say, if God exists, I will predict this experiment will have this result. That is not a God of the gaps. Now, we don't actually need to explain how God created the bricks. That doesn't matter. We don't need to know that. We just need to say that if I have this hypothesis, I can predict there's going to be this result. How it happened doesn't matter. All that matters is that you can predict a result we don't know yet, and you get it right. That's evidence.
TJump, it seems to me that if something was testable and repeatable, someone would still always be able to come up with an alternative explanation.
Oh, absolutely. That's called the problem of underdetermination. You can always post hoc. That would be a God of the gaps. So if you say, I make a testable prediction that God will give me a gold brick every time I pray for a gold brick, and a gold brick comes in front of me, and then you hypothesize, well, maybe it's just tricky aliens doing it. Well, that is a post hoc analysis. So you're saying, here is this testable, I've made these testable predictions. I can predict something in the future that no one else can predict it. So that's good evidence of my hypothesis. And the fact that you can explain it with an alternative isn't evidence for the alternative, because that hasn't made any novel testable predictions. The difference.
Okay, well, how about this?
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
I think there might be, this comes down to interpretation, but I think there might be a verse where Jesus says something like, whoever asks will receive the Holy Spirit. You know, whoever knocks, the door will be open. Basically, the interpretation is that if you ask God to make you born again and you're sincere about it, he'll make you born again. So let's say that we tested people and they sincerely asked God, and let's say every single one of them really came to have legitimate faith. Would you consider that a legitimate test?
Yes, that would be a great test. Yes.
But I feel that psychologists could just say that the alternative explanation is not that God really exists, but maybe some wish fulfillment thinking just happened.
If it worked with 100% reliability, like it says in the Bible, that would be great evidence. Like the psychologist wouldn't be like, oh, it's just wish fulfillment. Like if everyone who just asked genuinely, I please enlighten me, God, or whatever, and it worked, and they then believed in God, that would be great evidence. Like the people would be pretty impressed with that.
But couldn't you just posit like solipsism and just say that these people might not even exist? Kind of thing?
Yes, you could, but again, that wouldn't be supported. The one that makes testable predictions is the supported hypothesis. Post hoc explanations aren't supported.
But it would render any proof invalid in some sense, right? It wouldn't be proof. It would just be a just so kind of.
No, it would just be fallibilistic knowledge that isn't absolutely certain, but still knowledge. You don't need absolute certainty.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's okay. You can go ahead this time.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna do my ridiculous kind of tongue twister questions anyway. So.
I appreciate it. So TJump. So what you presented here, this whole "I think therefore I am," this is like a defense against Christian precept. Is that basically what's going on here?
No, it's just epistemic solipsism is like a ground of knowledge. I use it to defeat precept, but it's not like what its purpose is.
I mean, the thing is that solipsism is pretty much what, in a way, you could say we're trying to kind of hoist that onto you. Because once you concede that, everything is faith-based from there on out. Yeah, if you don't know that the world actually exists and it all could be in your imagination, you can't then say, hey, I did the scientific experiment and proved X, because no, for all you know, the scientist in the lab doesn't even exist, right?
Nope, you can say that. Again, that's fallibilism. Just Google fallibilism. It's the consensus position accepted by philosophers and scientists. You could just.
Well, no, you don't know if philosophers exist. Remember, you can't appeal to those who are outside your mind.
We do know that. We do know that the external world exists. We know the other scientists exist. We don't know with absolute certainty, but we don't need absolute certainty to know things. So we do have that. You just Google fallibilism.
If you can't be certain, and I say you're 50% certain, you're 100%, you're 100% certain, you're 50% certain.
Yes, I'm 100%.
No,
I'm
right?
100% certain that I'm 50% certainty. I can say yes to that anytime.
Well, is that true? And how do you ground those kind of universals in a solipsistic frame?
Same way I ground any of them. Not a problem.
I mean, how? I mean, will you just say that I exist?
Definitional.
Like that, or?
The 100% is a description of my belief. I have a belief that chocolate is 50% better than vanilla. That is definitionally true, so I can say that is with 100% certainty. Not a problem.
Well, yeah, but how do you know that the laws of logic are invariant?
Again, laws of logic are descriptive. We already went through all this many times. Just Google fallibilism.
Yeah, descriptive.
Face, aren't you really asking, how do you know you're not going to wake up? Like TJump, how do you know you're not going to wake up tomorrow? Is kind of what he's asking. And wake up and be like, oh my God, everything I knew was a dream and it was all completely false. How do you know that's not going to happen? I think is what he's getting at.
Well, yeah, again, so it's fallibilism. Fallibilism says we have justified reasons to believe that. We can know that.
Or no, it would mean that you could wake up tomorrow and then tomorrow you'd realize, oh my God, I was wrong. Good thing I had a fallibilist position because I'm willing to update my knowledge now.
Fallibilism is the position we can have knowledge without absolute certainty. So I can know that isn't going to happen without having absolute certainty.
Isn't going to happen? Because I thought what it would mean would be like I could know that the American dollar is worth more than the Canadian dollar. Like I could know that it's whatever day it is tomorrow, right? Like I thought it meant fallibilism was those things, was that you don't have to be certain of that in the ultimate sense.
No, it's about any claim of knowledge. It's the claim that knowledge, any claim of knowledge does not require absolute certainty. You can have knowledge, any kind of knowledge, without absolute certainty.
So then I guess the question, if the question came down to some silly skeptical scenario, like how do you know everything wasn't created last Tuesday, or how do you know you won't wake up tomorrow in a different world, if you know from a dream or
Yeah,
whatever?
are we in the
Then,
Matrix?
yeah, any of those kind of scenarios. So what's the response to, what's the defeater for that? Or
We can use evidence like scientific evidence to conclude that is less likely than the alternative. So we have a probabilistic way to conclude we have knowledge it isn't the case. Again, it was just.
But isn't the whole point of like last Tuesdayism the idea that all available evidence is completely consistent with that hypothesis?
Yeah, but that's the same thing as post hoc rationalization. Every single hypothesis or every single set of data is explainable by infinitely many hypotheses, but they aren't all equally supported just because you can explain them all. So the point
But
of
isn't that kind
fallibilism,
of just like a who got there first thing? Because you're basically saying that whoever's building on this, if somebody comes along and gives an alternative theory, they're post hoc rationalizing something. But if they had gotten there first, maybe everything would be based on last Tuesdayism, where somebody said, hey, everything was created on this given Tuesday, and from there on out, it was created mature with all available signs of history.
Yep, that's how science works. Science works on whoever comes first with the most first testable predictions.
Doesn't it also work by conjecture, where people come along and posit opposing theories like wave and particle light things? And is it really who got there first?
Yeah, it's always whoever makes the novel testable predictions. So the new theories, especially like in quantum mechanics, there's about a dozen different new interpretations, but none of them are accepted because none of them made testable predictions. Whichever one makes testable predictions is going to win. Doesn't matter how crazy it is. Doesn't matter if it's the multiverse, the many worlds, the pilot wave. If it makes testable predictions, it wins.
But this is the underdetermination problem, though, right? That what if all available evidence is consistent with competing, historically validated perspectives?
Again, that's the novel testable. If your theory can make a new prediction that no one else has predicted yet, and it gets it right, even if the others can also post hoc explain it, that's good evidence of your hypothesis.
Supreme Leader Kim brought up the simulation hypothesis. We were debating that in regards to solipsism. I was wondering if you had any kind of response to that. How we know we're not in a simulation?
Fallibilism.
Or how would we know?
Google fallibilism. Just Google fallibilism.
Okay.
But if there's
Yeah,
a
but that's not-
plausible story that you could tell, like say it's likely, given everything we know, that in the future there'll be a sufficiently advanced civilization with sufficiently advanced technology, they could create a simulation where, just like a video game has certain features, we could just be a fully fleshed out video game of a future existing technologically advanced civilization. Like how is it to say that that's not scientifically? Is it that it doesn't make predictions that we can act on now, like as a research program?
Yeah, so when I say predictions, you have to actually be able to confirm the prediction. So a prediction requires that it's novel, testable, falsifiable, repeatable, all those criteria. I forget what they all are. I think there's like 6 of them or something. And so you need to actually test the prediction to make sure it's correct and then have it verified in order for it to count as evidence. The fact that you just make predictions doesn't work. I can predict the sun's going to come up tomorrow, or I can predict there's going to be a teapot 10 billion light years in that direction. That would be a great prediction, but since we can't test it, it's not going to count as evidence for my hypothesis.
You made a prediction, like let's say I'm assuming I'm in a simulation. I'm going to make a prediction that the more and more we dig into the fundamental nature of the universe, we'll go down to the lowest level of physical stuff to some kind of like information theoretic bottom level of just maybe like, what's it called, like ontic structural realism, like where you're just at the bottom, that's just pure structure and relation of whatever is there. And I'm going to predict that because I think I'm in a virtual reality created by a future simulation. Would that count as like a prediction about like the direction that science is going to move in? And see,
I think you'd have to be more specific than that. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know enough about ontic structural realism to say how. I don't know if that would really count, because I think the
there's
abstract
a good book.
relations.
It's by Don Ross and James Lady.
Oh yeah, I know what ontic structural realism is, but I think that those aren't actual concrete things. So saying that we're in a concrete computer simulation based on a non-concrete relation, I think that would be a contradiction. But if you could make some specific prediction, like saying if we zoom into the world and we find a bunch of ones and zeros at a negative whatever 10 to the negative 40 microns or whatever, when we zoom in, we find a bunch of ones and zeros, and we discover that to be correct, then I'm like, yeah, that's good evidence that your hypothesis is true. We're in a simulation. Or if you could just predict like the next set of particles we're going to discover, like we're going to discover the WIMPs, weakly interactive massive particles, at exactly this weight or this mass, and because we're in a simulation, that would be good evidence of your simulation hypothesis.
So
This is like oh, sorry. So, yeah, someone else can go.
So I googled fallibilism. I came up with a little chart. It says no synthetic proposition is infallible. Empirical knowledge cannot be absolutely certain. And the reasons given is the problem of sensations, problem of induction, and problem of theory ladenness.
Yes. So that's the
interesting.
Point. Those are still knowledge, even though they're not absolutely certain.
Empirical knowledge cannot be absolutely certain.
Yes. Everyone in science agrees with that.
Why is it called knowledge, though? Because if knowledge is justified true belief and truth is absolute, it's not just something that could be the case. How can we say knowledge can be something that is not the case?
So you can have a justified belief, like it's justified based off of some probability. Like if I roll a dice, it has some probability of landing on a 4, and so I believe it's a 4. And now I don't know what it landed. I'm not looking at it, but it could have landed a 4. And if it did, then I have a justified true belief that it landed a 4 because I believe it landed a 4 based on some probability assessment, whatever. And it is true that it also landed a 4, even though I don't know it. So it's a justified belief and it's a true belief, which means it's a justified true belief.
Well, what was the justification?
I did some kind of probabilistic analysis to say it was going to land a 4.
Well, I mean, but if it's a dice, I mean, what are you saying? Perhaps maybe you've got so many of the other numbers that now you pretty much need a 4.
That would be a gambler's fallacy. That would not work. But no, I just I calculated the physics how it was going to roll, and I predicted it was going to land a 4 or whatever.
Okay, yeah, you knew like the temperature and the spin, and okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay.
So yeah, TJump, I didn't hear you last time. So you said you use I think therefore I am as an argument or a defense against pre-suppers. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I mean, I think therefore I'm an epistemic solipsist, so I use that as the grounds of knowledge. And pre-suppers argue you can't have knowledge without a God, so I just input my ground of knowledge and say, yes, I can.
Okay, I understand. So getting back to this testable, repeatable thing, what about just logical arguments for God?
As far as I know, they don't work. They're just unsound. Like you can't use an analytic proposition to get a synthetic conclusion. Like saying A equals B, B equals C, therefore C equals A, like that's perfectly valid. But you can't get a sound argument out of that just based off of the validity, because you could say cats are dogs, dogs are chickens, therefore cats are chickens. So just having the valid structure of an argument, like a logical argument, doesn't get you a sound conclusion. And so just using logical arguments for God can't get you the soundness of the premises, even if it's logical, like the ontological argument.
Say sound, we're talking about the truth property or whatever, right? Of the proposition or conclusion.
Yeah. So validity is whether or not the conclusion follows from the premises, and soundness is whether or not the premises are true.
Right. Yeah. So how would let's say in a solipsistic, nihilistic, atheistic worldview, how would you know if anything is sound to any degree?
Fallibilism. Google fallibilism.
But it just seems like you just basically say like, look, solipsism is the grounding of my worldview. How do you know that? Oh, well, kind of like, I know absolutely, and everything else is fallibilism.
No. So again, solipsism isn't the grounding of my worldview. It's the ground. It's like the first thing we do about knowledge. It's the grounding of knowledge. It's not like I'm saying I exist as the foundation of reality. I'm not an ontological solipsist. I'm an epistemic solipsist.
You don't know that you're not like even a transcendental metaphysical solipsist. You don't know that you're not.
So that, again, that's not a part of my worldview. That's irrelevant to my worldview. My worldview just starts with the way we start with knowledge is I think therefore I am. The ontological stuff is irrelevant to my worldview.
But I mean, it's like once you grant that epistemic solipsism, for all you know, you're the transcendental, metaphysical solipsist, right?
That is completely outside of anything in my worldview. So again, I'm a fallibilist, so I think we can know there is an external world. We can know there are other minds. We just start with I think therefore I am. That's all it means. That's just where we start.
I mean, where am I going wrong? Because look, so epistemic solipsism, I don't know other minds exist for sure.
No,
right?
no. Epistemic solipsism is that the first thing I know is that I exist. That's all it is. That's the first thing. That's it. That's complete epistemic solipsism. The first thing I know is I exist.
Yeah, it means you don't necessarily know at that stage.
No, it doesn't say that ever. The only thing it says is that the first thing I know is I exist. That's it. It doesn't say anything about what we don't know. It doesn't say anything about what the other things we can know. It just says the first thing we know is I exist.
I mean, the way I've read it, it's like only the self can be known.
This is the first thing. So again, the epistemic solipsism is just that's the first thing we know. The first thing. That's the grounds of knowledge, the first part of knowledge, and then we can ground other things after that.
I mean, how could an epistemological solipsist know that anyone?
Fallibilism. Google fallibilism.
Is it? I mean, I don't know where you get that from, because I mean, this is not. I mean, is there any well-known PhD philosopher or anything that would say that solipsism and then fallibilism?
Yes, I've actually had this discussion on my YouTube channel many times with many philosophers, theist philosophers, who actually brought this up. Randall Rouser brought this up against me. Trent Doherty brought this up against me. He's a pretty well-known epistemologist. He's a theist. Both of those are theists.
You know what Doss would say, right? You go, they're scumbags. Come on, they're scum. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Is this something that's true in all possible worlds? Possible worlds thing is
modal logic. No, modal logic I think is ridiculous garbage nonsense.
Modal logic. Yeah, it seems to come down to that also.
Yeah, especially there's one of the best defeater to modal logic is you can ask the question, is it possible, using modal logic, to believe it's possible God exists and to believe it's possible God does not exist? And it's not. That's a logical contradiction in modal logic.
Huh.
So
but epistemic solipsism is the claim that you can only know your own mind with certain.
Yeah, that's the first thing you know. That's it.
Now it's the only thing you know with certainty.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolute certainty. That's the first thing you know. That is the ground of knowledge. It is the first thing that you ground knowledge off of.
Yeah. So now you say you know other things, but you don't know them with certainty.
Yes, that's the fallibilism thing.
So you can know things that could be false.
Yes, that's the fallibilism thing. Fallibilism literally, the word fallibilism means you can have knowledge that could be false.
This is great.
So you can have a justified true belief, which is
no.
This is great because we never got to this point before about this type of stuff.
Yeah, again, just Google fallibilism. Not my position. I didn't.
No, we get you. No, we get you, but I think where Dutch is a bit more pushy than me. Like, really, he done what I was trying to do. I'm just too gentle. It's like what he's saying is that's nonsense. Like, you can't have a justified true belief that could be false. Like, that's a contradiction in terms.
You're right. It's a justified belief that would be false. You just don't know it yet. So it's, again, this is just the consensus in philosophy. You take it up with them. Solved a long time ago. Not my interest.
No, because you don't know they exist. You can't appeal to someone outside of your mind. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I can do that. Fallibilism. I have knowledge of that. Not a problem.
How do you know that? That you got that definition external to your mind. So, or at least you believe you did. But you don't know that.
It's justified.
No, but you don't know.
It's a justified.
No, but okay. Could that definition be coming from within solipsistically?
Could it be false? Yes, that's what fallibilism means. It could be false. But
No. Could that definition be coming from within solipsistically?
I don't know what that means, but it could be false, and that's what fallibilism means. But it's still knowledge, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, you know what it means. It just means that definition is, in other words, could you have a solipsistic search engine, the way you're getting a solipsistic answer back?
Yes. So, I mean, we could be in the Matrix or whatever. Yeah, there's lots of different possibilities. It could be false in many different ways, but it doesn't matter. It's still knowledge.
Well, I mean, but it's like Dutch is saying that you're saying it doesn't matter. It's still knowledge, even if it's false. It's still knowledge.
Yeah, that's what fallibilism means. It has a % chance that it could be false, and it still counts as knowledge.
How do you know that?
Because that's what fallibilism is. Google fallibilism.
This could be your imagination. It could be all in your imagination.
I've lost any interest. Like this is a well-known thing in philosophy. You can go bother the philosophers if you want to go debate them. Go for it. Just Google fallibilism.
But they would, okay. Are they external to your mind, or are they internal?
Again, I'm totally done with that topic. Like, just Google fallibilism. It's the consensus in philosophy. If you don't agree with it, I don't care. You can argue the world is flat as much as you want. Just go bother the people who want to debate that.
Well, hold on. How do you know the world isn't flat? I don't believe it's flat, but
because science. That's why.
Well, I mean, I agree. I agree that the Earth is spherical.
Zero,
but
zero desire to go any more down this road. Like, if Google fallibilism. Fallibilism is the consensus in philosophy. If you want to debate against it, go bother them. They have the time and interest. I don't.
Okay, but you could be fallible about that, right?
Yes, that's what fallibilism means. Could be wrong. Could be fallible.
You want to talk, Supreme Leader? He's saying fallibilism equals my feels.
Take it up with the philosophers. You can go bother them.
Chime in, dude.
So TJump, Edward Fazer is a guy that people think is kind of smart. Have you looked into his stuff?
Edward Fazer is very smart. He's a resurgence of Thomism. Five arguments for God or something. I forget the title of his book exactly. 5 ways something. Yeah, I mean, he's a smart guy. I think his arguments are complete crap. I think Thomism is garbage, but yeah, he's definitely a smart guy.
No, I could.
5 ways.
Hey, by the way, I don't know if it's me or you, TJump, but you're cutting out for me a lot.
Yeah, I think it's happening because of the storm outside. I don't think it's just not really. I don't know how to fix that.
Oh, he's cutting out.
Yeah, I think that's because of the storm outside. I can't really fix that. I can't do anything about it.
TJ, would you say you're a hard deterministic nihilist?
No, I'm not a nihilist. I believe in moral realism. I don't think I'm not a nihilist. I am a determinist, mostly. I do agree quantum randomness is a thing, but it's all just either determined or random.
Would you say randomness is something? Is randomness something that we just can't explain?
Couldn't you say things are sort of randomly determined?
No, so I'd say that the consensus in physics right now is that randomness is in itself a thing that exists, not just an ignorance thing. It is really a property of the universe. So I just go with the consensus on that one. I don't really know enough about it.
It's like randomness is like indeterminate, right? But what I mean is maybe if we knew all things, we would know. If we knew, more or everything, then we would probably we would know that seeming indeterminate state, right? We would know all of those. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it's just our ignorance. It's something we just don't understand yet. So it's only probabilistic in the sense that we can't explain it yet. But the consensus in physics right now is that is not the case. They think that randomness is really a fundamental part of the universe itself. It's not just our ignorance. It really exists. There is a randomness thing that exists. That is the consensus in physics. There's a poll. I don't remember what it is, but it's the one I keep referencing when I talk about idealism, where it shows that only like 6% of physicists are idealists or something like that. A consciousness collapse poll or whatever. And the same poll shows that the physicists believe that randomness is a thing in the universe. That is a real property, not just ignorance. It is a real thing.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm aware of what you're saying. Okay. I just thought you might actually agree. And yeah, it's not like you're disagreeing. You're saying that perhaps it is ignorance or lack of knowledge, but you're saying consensus-wise, not.
Yeah, I just go with the consensus on that one. I don't know enough about the physics, so I just say whatever they said, I'm going to go with them.
Because it seems almost, doesn't it, like kind of, shaking up a box of like coins and like kind of chucking them, and we don't know what's going to come heads and tails. But, if you had more knowledge, you would be able to calculate all of those trajectories.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility, for sure. It's logically possible, but that's just And just leave it up to the consensus.
Isn't it also possible there could be an infinite amount of variables? So nothing could be totally predicted as 100%.
I'm not sure if it, you know, I mean, I don't know. Do infinites work in this realm? I'm not sure. You know,
Yes,
maybe like almost infinite.
Infinites absolutely
Okay.
work in physics. They're used, both potential and actual infinites are used in physics all the time. So yes. But
I know they crop up mathematically. I just didn't know if like a true infinite.
They are
you know what I mean?
used as actual existing and potential infinites that are real in the world, not just mathematically. They are like real things in physics.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm not as aware. I mean, I just, you know, if you ever sort of find anything worth watching, maybe hit me
Feynman,
up or
Richard
something, you know.
Feynman's, I forget what it's called. He created a specific method that uses the infinites to describe the actual movements of the particle in the collapse, some kind of collapse thing. I don't remember. It was Richard Feynman's invention. Is that there are
wave
literally
function.
an actual infinite number of ways that the particle diffuses in the diffusion pattern thingy. Feynman diagrams. Thank you.
Did I lose him or? Oh, yeah. So I think, was you saying? Are you saying basically that when you know, with the wave function, right? You're saying that there's going to be an infinite amount of possibilities, right? Kind of
No, like
indeterminate
it
where it's going to
literally
lie.
diffuses into an infinite number of patterns. Like it literally exists in all of those infinite patterns. Alan Aldridge says they're path integrals. I don't always trust what he says because it's not always correct, but he knows a decent amount about quantum mechanics.
Okay, yeah. So, and you're saying there's a video or like a documentary or something out there I can watch, I guess, right?
Yeah, just Google those. Google Feynman diagrams and path integrals, whatever.
Just say again.
What? Feynman diagrams and path integrals. Yeah, just Google those things.
Feynman, or okay, yeah.
Feynman
Path
diagrams.
intervals. Okay. Cool, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. All right, guys, it's getting pretty late for me. I think I'm going to head out. Thanks for the conversation. I will talk to you guys later.
How do you know that? Just don't worry about it.
God told me. That's how I know.
All right,
Yeah,
this was awesome,
fallibilism,
TJump.
right?